Yo, what's good, cuzzo? Bro, listen, I ain't changed the title yet. Chill, bro. I did not change the title. I didn't change the title, bro. I did not. I got to change the title. I be listen, bro. Chill, yo. God, come on, bro. The live just started. The live just started. Chill on me, bro. Not too much on me, man. The live just started, bro. Can I change it first? Bro, stalker, bro. You got to chill, man. You got to chill on me, bro. I'll change the title, bro. God, dog, can I, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, dog, can I change the title? Like, can I change the title? Bro, chill on me, bro. Let me change the title. Oh. You have a basketball game next Saturday? I'm probably gonna be out there, you know, next Saturday, Father's Day. You say I'm losing it? I'm not losing it, bro. Chill, not too much on me. Bro, y'all got to chill, man. Y'all got to chill. Y'all got to chill, bro. Alright, y'all about to get straight into this video, bro.
A little bit of context. So I'm a freshman in college and I live in a suite with 7 other guys. We all get along quite well with just some minor bumps now and then. I'm closer to one named Andy, less close to Andy's roommate Jack. I'm a tall and thin guy. Andy is bigger than me but not taller, just a broader dude. Jack is a hockey player, so he's pretty ripped but shorter than both Andy and I, and is usually a very relaxed guy.
Yeah.
Jack is usually the aggregator. So last night I got home from a party and was pretty messed up, and my 2 suite mates had just gotten back from another party. Andy was blacked out. We danced around my room while I blasted music, and then Andy and Jack left to go smoke. I began to FaceTime my girlfriend, and then I hear more knocks on my door and I turn my laptop screen brightness off and shut off the sound. Andy and Jack walk in, high as a kite, and Andy is still blacked out. Andy begins to get a little aggressive, and so I went with it, pushing each other back and forth. Next thing I know, Andy's eyes just went out. He was still looking around, but you could just tell he wasn't in his mind at all.
Oh, no.
It's as if he just slipped into this odd trance. At that moment, he slammed me against the wall and had his hand around my neck. And I'm like, "Hey, Andy, that's enough, man." And he's not letting go. Jack sees what's up and comes over to coax him away, and Andy is not having any of it. He's just got his hand around my neck, pressing me against the wall, and has this death stare looking straight into my eyes.
Man, Andy, what he
So
possessed.
at this point I start to freak out a little bit, and I'm really trying to get out of the hold. Eventually Jack gets him off of me, and I lunge at Andy to push him out of my room once and for all. Andy instantly puts me in this death-like chokehold where I can feel his arms getting tighter and my oxygen supply lower. At this point I'm terrified and yelling at Jack to get him off of me and yelling, "I can't breathe." I don't know how we got him off, but
this experience with Akeem Law Firm has been...
Got me with that, bro.
we were in a bit of a scuffle trying to move Andy out the door. He's getting seriously aggressive, trying to get through Jack's arms to me. I, at this point, jump backwards and lunge for the knife laying on my desk. I pull out the blade and yelled, "Andy, get out of my room." I think something clicked in his primitive head that told him knives are not to be messed with. I'm yelling at him and Jack tells me to put the knife away. So I do, and we lunge at Andy again. I've got my arms around his torso, pushing him out the door. He dumps a liter of orange crush on me that was open on the mini fridge right next to us. He then slips and falls in the soda, and while Jack grabs his arms, I pushed him out the door, shut it, and promptly locked it. Now Andy is banging on the door, punching the door, yelling at me, "You little baby, just open the door." Now I'm not really sure why he's doing this, but like I said, he was in this creepy trance I've seen him only one other time get in. The banging continues and his body's slamming the door while yelling, "I'm gonna break this door down and end you." All the while he's milling about between slams, just staring in my peephole. My girlfriend is still on FaceTime and is freaking out, understandably, and I'm at the door holding the knife, just pressing the door shut. Andy poured more soda under the door, but that didn't really do much other than make my floor sticky. Jack eventually left and stopped trying to get him to leave. About 15 minutes of this, I decide this is enough and had my girlfriend call public safety and say there's a dispute in suite 550 and to come quickly. 10 minutes later, pub safety shows up and he instantly complies with them to back away and sits down in a chair in the common room. I was honestly so terrified, and I'm glad that I had been drinking because if not, I would have been much more scared. Andy, please get some help, because I'm still a bit spooked to leave my door open. About 5 months ago, a friend...
Hey, I hope y'all know, when you drink, bro, you get possessed by spirits. So I'm just letting y'all know that. I hope y'all know that when it comes to y'all drinking liquor. Like, you get possessed by spirits. Like, I don't know if y'all know that, but you get possessed, so that's all I gotta say.
A friend of mine got expelled from his program because of bad marks. He was only halfway through his lease, and he didn't see a point of staying in the city since he was only here for school. He told me that if I wanted to take over his lease, as a subletter, he would only half charge me the rent, which I thought was a pretty sweet deal. So naturally, although I am from this town, I thought it was time to leave for my parents' place. I had already graduated, and although I have been looking for a new job for a while, I still felt like I couldn't miss out on the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I took over his lease and moved into his place. The house itself is actually pretty nice. It's 3 floors including the basement, and it's located near the university of my town, which is not a very safe area overall, but I spent a lot of my university years here and never felt unsafe. The room in the basement is pretty small but cozy, and the only other room down here is a girl who is currently a student, and she's pretty quiet. Actually, all the girls living here are pretty good roommates. I wasn't thrilled about living with 3 girls, but now I don't see why I would have thought it was an issue. They're all pretty great and a good time. I'm the only one in the house who is not a student, and also the only one who is originally from this town. The other roommates are actually all from cities that are only about an hour or 2 away at most, so unless there's something special going on, they all go home on weekends.
Yeah.
My friend who got expelled also only lives 2 hours away, so he would always go home for the weekend as well.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I forgot to mention, which is pretty crucial to the story, is that the house actually has 5 rooms, but right when they all moved into the new place together, one of the girls had a seizure on her bed.
Ooh. A Caesar? Yo, what's good, brother? A Caesar? Yo, she had a Caesar, bro. That's insane.
Passed
man.
away. This was pretty upsetting for everyone, and the landlord told them not to worry about finding anyone else. The rent never went up or anything, and the room was left vacant. According to the landlord, he just found it insensitive to try and find someone because he didn't want to turn someone's death into a financial inconvenience for him. So, after the girl's death, the parents came and took her belongings out of the room, and it just remained empty since then. I actually never looked in there because it just remained locked, and I don't really have much curiosity to see the room. It's on the 2nd floor, and I never go up there, so I never paid any attention to it. The first weekend I spent there was pretty uneventful. I remember that I spent one night at a boyfriend's place, and then the next night he slept over after we went out drinking at one of the college bars near the place. We were pretty wasted, so we passed out as soon as we got home. The next weekend, I was at home in my new room, and I couldn't sleep, so I decided to read a little bit. I was really enjoying the quietness of this new house since the girls weren't home at all. I come from a Latino family, so this quiet and serene environment was pretty rare. I thought that I heard a few noises upstairs, so I figured that one of the girls had probably decided to stay the weekend at the house, or she was just getting last-minute things ready before heading home. I didn't think much of this thing. I wasn't very close with the roommates, so I didn't even bother asking them if any of them had stayed home. I just felt like it was none of my business. The girl in the basement was for sure gone for the weekend because she apparently sleeps with her door locked and keeps it open when she's not home. One weekend, that same month, I woke up to pee and I could hear a toilet flushing upstairs, which was kind of weird since I knew that none of the girls were home. I was going to go check it out, but in my tired state I was too lazy and just didn't care enough. It's funny, horror movies are supposed to make you paranoid, but the biggest lesson I got from them was that there's always a rational explanation for things. This would prove to be my biggest mistake because for a couple of months I was always brushing things off and ironically creating irrational explanations to rationalize what I thought were irrational thoughts. For example, I heard creaking coming from the second floor and figured one of the girls must have forgotten something and decided to come by to pick it up. The girl must have driven 2 hours down and 2 hours back to her town in the middle of the night to pick something up. One Saturday I woke up to get some water and I noticed that the roommate in the basement was gone. Her door was open and her car was not in the driveway. There weren't any cars in the driveway, but I should mention that one of the girls doesn't drive. A couple of hours later I woke up because I heard steps coming down into the basement. At this point I yelled out the girl's name who doesn't drive because she is the only one who could have been in the house. I didn't get a reply and just heard the steps going back upstairs. At this point I started getting uneasy about being home on weekends, so I decided just to spend them at my boyfriend's house. One of the girls made a house Facebook page, which was supposed to address any issues like washing dishes or leaving messes, but it remained pretty inactive since everyone seemed to get along. I posted on there that some creepy stuff was happening on weekends and asked them if they could start letting me know if they'd be home for the night or not. They seriously thought I was joking around. The replies were not receptive at all and consisted of laugh out louds and oh my god, you're so funny. Even my boyfriend agreed that I was being paranoid because he too believed that everything had a rational and perfect explanation. The thing is, when you say that everything has an explanation, you are only invalidating paranormal explanations or ghostly activity, which is not what I was implying at all. I have never believed in ghosts or spirits or any of that jazz, and I never claimed to when I spoke to my roommates or to my boyfriend. They kept saying that the house was old and made noises, but I know the difference between old house noises and someone walking down the stairs and back up the stairs. Fortunately, my roommates did start posting things on the Facebook page to let me know they'd be gone. It was always to the effect of, "Hey, I won't be home this weekend, so don't worry about the ghosts."
Nah,
One weekend they let me know that they would not be home and my boyfriend was on the midnight shift, so I had to spend the night on my own. My boyfriend called me on his break while I was on the phone with him. I heard noises on the main floor. I told him I was going to go check it out, and he told me to go ahead because that idiot still thought I was just being paranoid. As I said this, I heard the footsteps going back up the second floor. Once I got onto the main floor, there was nobody in the kitchen, and all the doors into the house were locked. I was extremely paranoid and didn't feel safe. My boyfriend calmed me down and convinced me that everything was okay, so I never went to the second floor, and it's probably best that I stayed on the main floor. After the weekend, I told my roommates in all seriousness that I was convinced that someone had been in our house at some point that night. I told them what I heard, and all those idiots still claimed that it was the old house making noises. My boyfriend was almost permanently on midnights, so I did what I never wanted to do and started spending weekends at my parents' place. The girls still posted on the page whether or not they were leaving the house or not, and I decided that I should do the same. So I also started posting when I was and was not sleeping at the house. One Friday night, the Facebook page looks something like this. Roommate 1, not sleeping at home. Roommate 2, not sleeping at home. Roommate 3, staying home because of midterm exams. Me, I'm staying at my parents'. The next morning, I received a frantic text from one of the roommates saying that the roommate with the midterms had been attacked. Apparently, she was in her room studying and heard a noise right outside of her bedroom. When she went out to inspect it, she was greeted by a man walking out of the dead girl's room. I later found out more details about the whole thing from the roommate who was attacked. The man looked rough, greasy hair, and just a dirty face. When they made eye contact, he held up his finger to his mouth and uttered a shh while smiling. The nail on his finger was long, and his beard was apparently really scraggly and uneven, like it only grew in certain parts of his face. She screamed out of instinct, even though she knew there was nobody in the house. He lunged at her as she tried to shut the door, and she wasn't beaten up too badly. He just growled and told her to shut her mouth and said something like, "I'm not going to hurt you, but keep your mouth shut." He beat her, but not completely unconscious, and then when he walked out of her room, he went downstairs and walked out the front door. So he left the dead girl's room unlocked. My roommate locked herself in her room and called the police, who were there immediately. What's pretty creepy about the whole thing is that when they inspected the dead girl's room, they kept asking for clarification. So nobody has lived in this room for how long? Nobody has been renting this room, right? Did the parents take everything after the girl passed away? The guy had a really sweet setup, actually, and had brought his own small mattress to put over the bed frame. Obviously, the mattress was too small for the bed frame. He left most of his stuff because he probably didn't expect a confrontation that night. I don't think he knew she would be there that night because she never was. It probably sucked for him when I moved in because, before me, that idiot had the whole house to himself 2 days a week. The police did ask me quite a lot of questions and were interested in hearing my statement about hearing footsteps at night.
Whoa.
My 3 roommates and my friend are now convinced that maybe the girl didn't die the way they said she did, and maybe he had something to do with it. But I think the autopsy would have been able to distinguish a murder from a seizure. In their defense, the whole thing is really creepy. We're not really sure how long the guy had been living there, but it's very likely that it had been for at least a few months. The theory is that the guy had been climbing in through the window, so it's possible that he was even there at times when all of us were there. The police are really interested in talking to the landlord because they want to know how the man found out about the vacant room. The landlord is a pretty decent guy, so I don't know if there's anything going on there. I don't even feel an "I told you so" attitude from this whole thing. I think that I am just glad that the girl is okay because she seemed pretty shaken up. I just wish people were more willing to listen to me when I told them that I thought somebody was coming into our home. I even said it might be a squatter, which everyone laughed at. This happened very recently, so it might be a while before an update. As of now, the man had not been found by police, but the police remain optimistic about finding him, whatever that means.
Ew.
Amanda is my brother's girlfriend. At the time of the story, she was looking for her first apartment and moving out from her parents' house. Her and my brother didn't want to move in together since they had only dated for a few months. She instead opted to search for a roommate online. Browsing Craigslist, she found an ad titled something like, "Roommate Wanted, Females Only." This sort of thing was common since the area she was looking in was mostly young professionals. The listing was for a room in a house for about $225 a month, which was quite cheap compared to most places listed. The occupant listed herself as a 23-year-old student that wasn't quite comfortable living with any males. The other roommate would have their own room and attached bathroom. So far, Amanda was into this place. However, the listing only had a single photo from outside the property. Amanda sent an email wanting to meet the occupant and tour the house. Within 30 minutes, she receives an email back with all the details and a time to stop by. The girl worked late hours and wanted Amanda to stop by at 8 p.m. When Amanda arrives, there is a handwritten note on the front door saying, "Door broken, use back door." Walking around the house, it looks nice but slightly unkempt. Tall grass, weeds, dusty windows, etc. Still, no alarms for Amanda, though. When she knocks on the back door, an older man opens the door. At first, Amanda thinks she has the wrong house, but the man reassures her and says that the occupant, I forget the name, was out and he was the landlord. The occupant asked him to meet Amanda since she was working late. He seemed pleasant and offered to show her around. Alarms started going off, but aren't at red alert yet. First, the guy was clearly in his 40s, unshaven, and looked like he lived in his car. Also, only the kitchen light was on. As they walked around the house, Amanda noticed one huge red flag. No furniture, nothing. The landlord was polite about answering questions, but seemed irritable to keeping lights on for too long, rushing her around and only letting her look at rooms for a few moments. There was a single room that the landlord wouldn't open, telling her that it was the occupant's room and he didn't want to invade her privacy. As they walk down the hallway into the living room, she notices the front door has a plank nailed across it. Broken, for sure. Amanda's creepometer is starting to ding, so she decides to wrap up the walkthrough and leave, but trying to be polite. As she's giving the guy her "thanks for the showing" bit, he perks up and states that he forgot to show her the basement. It's recently furnished and would be a great rec room, and she should take a look down there. At the time, Amanda and the landlord are standing in the small hallway between the living room and the back kitchen, and this little hallway was the basement door. When he opens the door, it opens outward to create something of a barrier between Amanda and the back door. The basement is pitch black. He smiles, motions downstairs, and says, "Ladies first." What happens next is nothing more than a stroke of luck. Amanda got a text just as some random person parks in the front of the house. Thinking on her feet, she pretends it's a phone call and answers her phone. "Hey, yeah, are you here? I'll come out from around back and let you in. It's great, you have to see it." With a motion of confidence, she excuses herself around the landlord and walks out of the back door. She says the guy just looked at her like he was confused. Once outside, she sprinted to her car and sped out of there. When Amanda got home, she told her mother and my brother everything. Cops were called, they took her statement and went to investigate. The Craigslist post had been removed. Now, the house had been foreclosed over 6 months earlier and the property had been abandoned. When the police investigated, they found that the closed room the landlord didn't want her to look in was where the man had been staying. There was a pile of old dirty blankets, rotten food, and empty gallon jugs everywhere. More creepy was he had plastered ripped-up pages from adult magazines on all the walls in the room. Where do you even get those anymore? The real scary part was the basement. The man had tied a thin piece of fishing twine about shin level across the stairs about halfway down. The basement was empty except another pile of old blankets, a broom handle wrapped in leather belts, and a small box with a few rolls of assorted tape, duck, electric, etc. Amanda ended up not moving in.
How did it get so?
So a few years ago, I was studying on a university in a major city. Normally, I am living in a small town more than 70 kilometers from it, so, as you might have imagined, I had to rent a room. I found one in a 4-story building. Most of it was rented by various students. The flat I was supposed to live in looked like behind the door there was a 5 to 6 meter long corridor, very narrow one. On the right, there were 2 doors. Behind the first one, there was a room where my roommate was supposed to live in, then a kitchen, practically combined with a bathroom, which wasn't really hygiene positive, but it's an old building. On the end of the corridor, there was a big room that I was going to be living in.
Yeah.
For a year or so, it was really great. My roommate was a female student that was rather nice. She even cooked things occasionally, which was a life-saving thing considering the fact that if I were to do this, I would probably burn water black. But then she got pregnant with her boyfriend and had to say goodbye to studying. Here enters my second roommate. In fact, even after living with him for nearly half a year and all that happened then, I don't even remember his name, really. That should tell you all you need to know about our relationship. He was a 20 to 22-year-old student whose face I don't even remember either. I saw him maybe twice, for he was working and studying when I was in the flat, and vice versa. So time passes, and we are ignoring each other. Everything is rather fine. Then things start to happen. The first warning was a call from landlord. He is a tad bit ugly old man, especially his teeth look terrible, either missing or dark yellow, but I can't say anything wrong.
Now, come on, bro. Look at his teeth.
About him, as he's a decent landlord. Once I accidentally paid him too much and he quickly returned the surplus, so yeah, he was an honest guy.
I don't know.
He had several flats
Stalker,
in the city
I don't want to lie to
that
you.
he was
I
renting
honestly
to
don't
the
know,
students. He said to me that he would like me to watch over my
don't
roommate
know,
to
bro.
see if something is wrong with him.
I don't want to lie to you.
Something happened in his workplace. I think he hit someone and he was talking gibberish about that when he met with the landlord about money. We paid him not through a bank account, but hand to hand. He visited us once a month for that. So later that day I returned to the flat. And what did I see? A kitchen cupboard is broken. It looked like an elephant sat on it, and the remains were spread over practically the entirety of the room. Roommate is going in circles, looking like he was trying to clean the place. I ask him what happened, and he answers something about a party ended up wrong. So right now I should probably say why I haven't left the place straight away. I'm kind of a sheltered kid, living in a small town in a not-so-big and rather peaceful European country. I am a student, and in all my life I haven't even seen any drugs. I never witnessed any crime. For me it was, well, he acts strangely, but hey, maybe he has a bad day. I went to bed, or rather a mattress, for I slept only on it. It wasn't easy to go to sleep because he was making noises in the kitchen. I even went there to ask him to be silent. He was so surprised by me speaking, like he literally jumped. He said something along the lines of, "Sure, okay," and then it was a tad bit less noisy. The fact that the kitchen was still a mess, and even though he was there all the time, should be a second warning, but once again I didn't connect the dots. I only barricaded the door just in case by pushing a table that stood next to them so that the edge of that should prevent the door from opening. Also, he had his right foot in the bucket. No idea why. I was brutally awoken around 4 a.m. by him screaming that I have to open the door right now. His voice was angry, not scared, so I doubted there was a fire or something, so I loudly refused. Then he opened them by kicking them. The table with a computer on it was pushed back from the impact. The big part of the jam broke off too. He entered my room and started screaming something incoherently that he knew what I was planning. He didn't attack me, but he just kept screaming. He also broke a ceiling lamp with my favorite cup that lied on the table next to the computer. I, on the verge of a panic attack, sent a text message to my father, who was regrettably more than 60 kilometers from me, about what was happening. He tried to call the police, but for some dumb reason in this country they can only act if a direct witness or victim is calling them. So there was no help from them, which was completely stupid in my opinion.
I ain't knew police had that rule, but that's dumb, bro. I don't know, that's crazy.
The next half hour was strange, to say the least. My roommate kept screaming things incoherently. I think he somehow believed that I am after his life and continued to demolish the flat. I was still on my mattress, unable to leave because he was blocking the only way out. He nearly assaulted me when he saw my gloves. It was right after winter, which, as he decided, was proof that I'm a hitman, and I won't leave fingerprints if I kill him while wearing them. He was maybe half a meter from me while charging at me when he suddenly jumped back, screaming that he won't let me kill him that way. This routine was replayed several times. Several times he entered my room to scream something incoherently, only to leave quickly. In the end, I managed to get out by persuading him, the hardest persuasion skill test in my life, to be honest, that if I leave the house without taking the keys, then he will be safe. You can imagine how I felt moving through the corridor and unlocking the door.
Whoa.
With him
That's
being
what I'm
in the kitchen
saying.
behind me,
The
which
phones
was
are
full
so
of knives.
big, bro. Like,
In the end, I, however, managed to flee, wearing only pajamas and with a phone in my hand. I took refuge in another apartment in the same building, in which a relative of the landlord was living with 2 other persons. I knew him because once the landlord couldn't collect rent in person and asked me to give the money to him. They were even kind enough to make me some tea. I stayed there until the police came, then returned to the room. The roommate opened the door.
walkie-talkie
While I was
crazy.
packing everything that was valuable, mainly the computer and books. He was in the kitchen. The police tried to interrogate him, but rather unsuccessfully. He wasn't really responsive, but he looked like his attack was over, his manic phase, I suppose. They left him there after telling him to go for a walk to cool his head. I, in the same time, left the flat. I waited for an hour in a safe distance from this place, and my father picked me up and we drove back to my town. A few hours later, my landlord called me after I left the flat and told me to come there. The roommate was still there, and once again he ended up having some sort of mental breakdown. The landlord called the police once again, as the fella barricaded himself on the balcony, threatening to throw things on people if he wasn't left alone. This time the police came in force and practically dragged him out of the building.
Dang.
Now the thing is that I don't know exactly what happened to him after that. Ever since that incident, I've heard 2 versions. First was some sort of instantaneous insanity, schizophrenia, a paranoid type, I suppose. I learned later on that he was ripping cables from the walls as he was searching for a government-made wiretapping. The second was that he took some drugs and then mixed them with alcohol, and he somehow overdid it. The police searched through the room, but unfortunately, they found nothing. After that experience, I doubt that I will ever have a roommate again.
It's crazy, right, bro?
My mom separated from my stepdad in early 2013 when I was 17. He had already threatened to kick me out of his home for a multitude of reasons, anything from violating curfew to being bisexual, and really, I wasn't a bad kid. All I did was work and go to school, so I moved out with my mom and agreed to pay 1/3 of the rent, or about $400 a month. At the time, I made $7.50 an hour to get verbally...
Hey, I got a question, y'all. I got a question. How would y'all feel if y'all kid came out as bisexual, gay, anything like that, anything in that world? Like, how would y'all feel if y'all kid came out as an alphabet? You feel me? What would y'all do? Me personally, I'll support them 100%. I'll support them unconditionally. You feel me? I'll support my kid. What would y'all do? You don't know you have a child. I know you don't have a child, but I'm saying, what would you do if your child came out as an alphabet? What would you do? What would y'all do? Support. Okay, so we all on the same page. Okay, so y'all support. Okay, I was just curious.
Abused by customers and flipped burgers, and I worked around 20 to 25 hours per week. Plus, I went to school. Plus, I kind of had a social life. So usually on any given week, I was home for about 2 evenings and out otherwise. My mom was pretty lenient with me since I was paying rent, so my curfew was probably anywhere between 12 and 2:30. My mom worked full-time at a Wawa that was about 45 minutes away. She was also in school and had a boyfriend that lived a town over. She was home about as often as I was. We had a cat. It was just us. And this apartment used to be a barn. It's split into 4 apartments, 2 on both floors, and has an inaccessible attic and a basement that's incredibly creepy. It's off of a main road and a ways back down a driveway and an open field with a few other ancient buildings around it, and not much else besides trees. Initially, we took comfort in this, but then it got weird, like really weird. There was a closet in her bedroom that locked from the inside, and randomly it would be locked. Same with the pantry. Small things would be moved, and more we noticed we were missing things. Things would happen by themselves. Did you smoke a bowl out of my grinder? Why and when did you eat all those Cheez-Its? How did the cat flip over the litter box? It was eerie, but it was right outside of a Civil War zone, a major one, said to have hosted the bloodiest battle outside of Gettysburg. It was so dumb, but at first we thought it was a ghost, or we thought it was the other person. Obviously, it was a tense and weird time in our household. And I was getting sick of my mom smoking all the time, so before I left work one day after she had left work too, I set up a simple string trap that would snap when she opened the door. I just wanted to know for sure it was her and that we didn't have a pothead poltergeist floating around our house. An hour before my shift ends, my mom calls to tell me that she needs to cover another shift, so she'll be doing a double, and did I have bus money to get home? I did, so I went home. To my surprise, the string trap had been tripped. I was again missing a pinch of my green. I was incredibly sober and beyond explainably paranoid. My chest was starting to feel tight with anxiety, and I grabbed the pepper spray out of my bag. As I left the room, I heard feet shuffling above my head. My heart dropped. I might have even crapped myself. I grabbed the paraphernalia, set it somewhere safe outside, and bolted from the house and ran to the Burger King across the street where I dialed 911. After a little bit, the police showed up. I was beginning to feel like I definitely overreacted. I felt so stupid. I wanted to tell Officer Jones to go home. I changed my mind. There was nobody smoking anything in my house. But I did feel better when they told me that they would go search the house, and one of them stayed outside to wait with me while the others searched for the footsteps.
That's fire.
And I'm on the phone with my mom, who's a mixture of angry and concerned, telling her that it's probably all good and I'm sorry for scaring her. but then the door to the house swings open. I can hear a struggle,
Whoa.
and I walk to see it better. A police officer and a husky bearded man are wrestling at the foot of my stairs, just in front of the door. The bearded guy is holding onto the doorknob with one hand. I was so shocked and afraid I had to hang up the phone. The bearded man gets away and makes a sharp left across the patio over the short wooden fence and into the field with all the trees in it. He has gone into the night. The officer disappears after him only to return and tell me that he got away. They did a thorough sweep of the house. They found his semen around the drain of the shower, as well as, oh God, on our loofahs and razors. They discovered that the pantry had an attic drop-down door that was painted over, that this man had chipped at to get inside long before we showed up.
Dang.
He had been squatting there since the summer. When people moved in, he took to hiding in the attic, pantry, or closet. He came out when we weren't home. He ate our food. The officers didn't know this part, but he also smoked our green. He probably had a bond with our cat. If he didn't actually see me with my boyfriend, he definitely heard it. And seriously, who wanks it on a razor blade? Ew. It just makes me want to die to this day when I think about it. My mom's boyfriend moved in with us shortly after, and I was home even less. To this day, I am paralyzed with fear when I hear a strange noise like the house settling. I keep mace on me always, everywhere, at all times. This guy wasn't even violent, I guess, but just the idea that he wanked his free willy onto my loofah makes me feel unsafe in a
That's
profound
nasty,
way.
That's nasty,
I saw the other signs, I acknowledged them, and I ignored them.
Apparently you can go from 0.
That's crazy, bro. It's crazy. I'm not gonna lie to y'all.
So I'm 16 years old now and living in a duplex with my family, which consists of 3 younger brothers all under 5, my 18-year-old sister, and my mother and father. About 3 years ago when we lived in our old apartment, I was home alone for the entire day. This was pretty normal as my father worked in the summer. My mom would take the kids out to do things like swimming and other things like that. I usually just slept in and I had a small list of chores that I had to do during the day before everyone came home. One of those happened to be laundry. The way that the apartment is set up is on each level there's about 20 places where people live, and only one laundry room shared amongst us. I lived a few doors down from it, and I had to pass the door to the stairs in order to get to it, which that door had a little window. I was going to throw the clothes from the washer into the dryer when I then heard a clicking noise. I wasn't really sure what it was, but for a second I decided to listen before it then stopped. I was always really freaked out from that apartment, and this definitely wasn't helping. I finished throwing the laundry into the dryer and then started it. Then I started walking down the hall when I then heard that same clicking noise yet again. I froze. It sounded like it was coming from the stairwell. So as scared as I was, I looked out the window, and to my surprise, I didn't see anyone. Really relieved, I booked it down the hall to my apartment. I closed and locked the door, going about the day again, or so I tried. When it's quiet in that apartment, you can really hear everything. Conversations, footsteps, laughing, everything, especially from the hallway, and that's where the most crap was heard. I was in the kitchen feeding my animals when I heard slow, heavy footsteps in the hall. It sounded like they were coming down the hall right outside of the apartment. I decided to run to the living room and mute the TV so that I could listen, when I then heard 3 loud bangs at my door. I was kind of crapping my pants at this point, not really knowing what to do. I kept the TV muted and slowly moved my way to the door, looking out the peephole. I was horrified at what I saw. It was a black figure standing with its back towards me. I didn't know what to do, and I was frozen in place. And then, I then heard a familiar sound. That same bizarre clicking sound that I heard before. I noped the hell out of there and grabbed my animals, then hid in my room. I mean, I was really scared, but I was starting to wonder if it was really nothing. I usually listen to scary stories just like these to scare the crap out of me, but maybe something was actually there.
Damn.
Later in the evening, when my sister arrived home, I told her about what I saw because she's really into supernatural things like that. When I told her what I saw, the color from her face ran away.
Whoa.
She said something along the lines of seeing that same figure, but in dark rooms and hallways, not lit ones. The next time I encountered it, I was sleeping on the bottom bunk and my sister in the top. The clock read 3:37 a.m., the fan was going, and the nightlight was plugged in. My sister was sound asleep at this point. I heard the clicking again, but this time quieter and from under the bed. One of my cats on my bed didn't seem to notice it, so I figured maybe I was just imagining it. That was until I then noticed a long black, bony cold arm then reach out and start making its way right up to my bed. I then yelped, enough to wake up my sister, but no one else. Pretty groggily, she just tells me to shut up and that she's trying to sleep. But you gotta see this, I say as I look down and notice the thing's gone now. I didn't catch an ounce of sleep that night. I have lots of other terrifying stories from that hellhole apartment, but I think most of them revolve around that thing. Ever since I moved, I haven't had anything weird happen since.
Damn.
I'm just really glad that thing never followed me to my new house. Thank God for that.
When I got rear in
I love to adventure. I've been to almost all 50 states. I've seen my fair share of diversity within nature and people. My main reason for travel is to explore the wilderness. Sometimes I will backpack in the Rocky Mountains, drive through national parks, and then drive through the desert. Growing up on the East Coast, I didn't get to experience the desert much, so I tend to favor the desert drive over the mountainous drive. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and I haven't experienced anything too odd in the desert, other than the sheer feeling of loneliness. My favorite time to drive through the desert is at night, because the stars majestically illuminate the terrain. About a month ago, however, I saw more than just sand and stars on this particular drive. I was driving...
Hey, I got a question. Was y'all driving the desert late at night? I got a question, Claire. Was y'all driving the desert late at night? That's all I want to know. You said H no? Nah. Yes. Okay.
Through the desert in Arizona. Nightfall was closing in on me, which was one of the best times. The sunset across the desert brought me to a whole new place. Sometimes I would even camp out in my car, because in a sense, I loved how alone I was out there. Normally I would bring my dog with me, but my parents were in town, so I was all alone this time. Again, with nightfall approaching, I didn't know whether I should camp out or keep driving home. I figured my parents would want to see me, and I was only about an hour from the house, so I continued through the quickly darkening desert. If any of you have ever been through the desert in Arizona, you would know that you occasionally see horses and other animals along the side of the road. So seeing figures on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere isn't anything out of the ordinary. About 45 minutes from my house, my high beams pick up on a different figure. It looked like a person. Being the generous person that I am, I pulled over to see if anything was wrong. As I approached, I noticed the person wasn't moving at all. They were just sitting upright. They didn't seem to notice that I was even there. His head never turned. "Are you okay?" There was no answer. No acknowledgement that I had said anything. The man was poorly dressed, rather pale, but surprisingly clean-shaven. He was oddly skinny, though. And the more I focused on him, the more I realized how abnormally skinny he was. "I, was driving by and noticed you. I wanted to make sure that you were okay." Still nothing. He was staring straight at the ground. I sat there awkwardly for a couple of seconds, until I finally saw his jaw move.
I need some water.
His voice was deep. It didn't sound like a person. I can't quite explain it, but his voice just sounded...
I run a podcast, so
It look like to me. Loki do think he man, but I ain't gonna lie.
off. Okay, man. Let me grab you some out of my car. I walked to the passenger door and reached for my bottle of water. Before I could even reach it, though, I just sensed that something was off. I jolted my head where the man was sitting. He was gone. I was now panicking. I didn't know where he went to. I closed the passenger door and took a quick look around. I heard movement from behind a rock about 10 to 20 feet off the road. A man came out from behind the rock, but it was not the same man. This guy looked absolutely nuts,
Whoa.
and he was holding something in his hand.
Whoa!
He started running towards me. I then jumped into my car and took off down the road. As I looked into my rearview mirror, I realized that there was more of them. Maybe 5 or 6, all emerging from behind the rocks right off the road.
Boy, they're about to get
They
you,
were
boy.
all staring at me as I sped off.
They're about to get you.
I had no intention of slowing down. In fact, I would have been happy if I got pulled over by a cop. Within 3 to 4 minutes of that happening, I felt relaxed enough to play some music. I took one last glance into my rearview mirror. My blood then turned to ice.
Whoa! 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 Hold on, gang. Oh! What was y'all do? Class, what was y'all do, class? You chilling, you minding your business. You chilling, you minding your business. And y'all see this, what would y'all do? What was y'all doing in this predicament? What y'all doing? Shooting?
I was in complete shock when I saw the man who I had offered the water to sitting in my back seat, just staring at me. His eyes. They weren't looking at me. They were looking into me. I, of course, then slammed on my brakes, still in too much shock to make any noise. I couldn't take my eyes off of him. He then started to smile. The look of death was on his face.
Soon, you will be one of us,
he stated as he lifted up his knife. I jolted out of my car, and as soon as I did, I could hear my back door opening up. This man was very fast, inhumanly fast, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to outrun him for long.
Are you ready?
The deep voice said as he quickly approached me. It was now completely dark out. I had no clue where to go. It was over, or so I thought. There were headlights approaching us. At this point, I was a couple hundred feet from my car. I didn't hear the man behind me anymore. I waved down the car that was approaching me. Thank God the driver saw me and stopped. After explaining to the man what happened, he tried calling the police, but sadly, there was no signal. His name was Mark, and he agreed to follow me home just in case anything else happened. He also had a pistol on him, which really made me feel safe. After about 35 minutes of driving with Mark behind me the whole way, I finally made it back home. After thanking him, I went to go check the back seat of the car to see if my stuff was still there, or if the man had left anything. Luckily, everything was still there. I did, however, notice a sheet of paper on the top of my backpack. I took it and opened it up.
You aren't safe. You will soon be one of us.
The note read. A chill ran through my body. I was startled by the sound of footsteps in front of my car and jolted up. "The dog threw up," my mom said, standing right in front of my car. I went back inside. I didn't say anything to my parents. They probably wouldn't have believed me anyway. I figured that I would call the police and let them know what happened after they left. "Oh yeah, some guy stopped by looking for you about 20 minutes ago." Who?" I asked. "I don't know. It was some skinny guy with a really deep voice. He didn't talk much, but he did give me this letter to give to you, so here. But try to find more normal friends, please." My heart was racing. As soon as my parents left, I opened it.
We know where you live.
The letter read. My heart sank. After calling the cops and explaining everything, they investigated it for a while, but sadly, they found no sign of people along the section of road I was on. I gave them the letter for DNA testing, but I still haven't heard anything back. I installed a security system to my house and haven't had any problems since.
Nah, features.
And I hope to God it stays that way.
That's crazy, bro.
Hey, did you know you...
Nope, I don't care. Yeah, that's good.
There is a single stretch of I-70 in Utah between Salina and Green River. Over 100 miles with no services, no hotels, no restaurants or gas stations of any kind.
So, I got a question, y'all. So you heard he said it's a stretch of road where it's no gas station, no restaurants, no hotels, no nothing. Why would you still drive on that? You feel me? Like I feel like you just asking for trouble, bro. You know the most creepiest stuff gonna be happening right there. You know what? I ain't gonna say that.
There are only some viewing areas where you can pull off the road. It's a hell of a drive, and don't get me wrong, those Utah mountains are stunning in the daytime, and at night you have one of the clearest views of the stars you can find. But 100 miles is a long way to go, especially at night.
That's a lot.
Anyone who has driven that stretch of interstate can tell you it's not very busy, even during the day. Approaching dusk, traffic becomes even more scarce. And by the time the middle of the night rolls around, you can drive for miles and miles and not see headlights from another car. And don't even get me started on cell service out there. Definitely not a place you want to be stuck in, especially at night. The thought of breaking down out there on a dark night with no one around for miles is enough to give anyone second thoughts about attempting the drive. Unfortunately for me, I was in a hurry, so I decided to go for it.
That boy
A
tripping.
little backstory. I'm originally from a city called Lincoln in Nebraska, mostly known for the college sports team, the Cornhuskers.
Okay, Nebraska Cornhuskers.
I was born and raised there. I lived there up until I was about 25, and then I decided that since I was single, with no kids, that now was the time to get out there and explore. So I accepted a job in LA and moved out west. Most of my family still lives in Lincoln, so I try to go back and visit every once in a while. This particular Sunday, I got a call from my mom around 2 p.m. My grandpa, who had been in a nursing home since he had a stroke, was getting a lot worse. They didn't expect him to make it to the end of the week. So if I wanted to go and see him, I should do so sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, I was out of a job, but this meant that I had the time to go and see him. Last-minute flights can be rather expensive, so I decided to drive. I had made the drive before. It certainly wasn't fun, but it was a much cheaper option, and I figured I should try and drive all the way through. And luckily for me, I had gotten my car serviced a couple of weeks prior. 2 hours later, I was packed up and on the road with my dog, Chance. It was a pretty uneventful drive for the most part. Daylight faded, and I remember being disappointed that I would be driving through Utah and most of Colorado at night, and I would miss out on the beautiful scenery. I love looking at the stars, but it's hard to enjoy them when you're driving 80 miles per hour. And since I was in a hurry, I wouldn't be stopping to get a better look. So I resigned myself to just singing loudly to keep myself awake. We've all been there, right?
No.
A little after midnight.
No, I never been there a day in my life. No.
I finally got to Salina, Utah. I passed the billboard that warned motorists of what's to come. No service for 110 miles. It's paid for by the city of Salina, and it's a good thing too. According to the gas station attendants, several times each week someone comes walking up to the building because they ran out of gas. So I stopped and filled up, and was immediately back on the road. It had snowed recently. The roads were clear, but there was still snow shoveled off to the sides. Now, I'm the kind of driver that speeds everywhere I go. The speed limit on this particular stretch of road is usually around 80 miles per hour, so I'm typically going about 90, except on the steep grades, which there are plenty. I've been driving about 30 minutes at this point. I had passed a few cars several miles back, but they're too far gone to even see their headlights. Have you ever driven on a road alone late at night and just marveled at how dark it actually is?
No, I never did that before. You keep bringing this up. How have you ever? No, we never did this before.
How alone you actually are?
No.
Sometimes when I'm on a drive like that and I get to a long stretch of road, I like to turn my headlights off as I'm driving, just for a few seconds, just to see how it really looks when there's almost no light around. It's almost cathartic. Suddenly, as I'm driving, I hear a loud pop and the car jerks right. Or maybe it was left. I can't remember. My low tire pressure indicator is flashing, and I slam on the brakes after I straighten out the car. I pull over to the side of the road and put on my emergency lights. Chance is going nuts. I've blown out a tire before, so I already know what to expect as I step out of the car. My right front tire is completely flat, and I tried to examine the tire more closely to see what actually happened, but even with the flashlight on my iPhone, it's still too dark to see. I check my phone, and of course, there's no cell service. I roll down the rear passenger window so Chance can stick his head out and get some fresh air, while I replace the tire. I get to work, grumbling under my breath that of course, I'm just about halfway to Green River, and I'll have to go the rest of the way on my spare tire, which would significantly slow me down.
I built my bag collection.
Mind you, y'all.
I removed.
Mind you, he thought it was smart to drive on a dark road with no lights on. Cause he talking about he wouldn't know how it feel to drive in the dark. This buddy right here, he not smart, bro. Like, I don't know what's going on, bro.
The spare tire and the jack from the trunk, and went to go get started. As I made my way back up to the front of my car, I froze. Someone was walking towards me, their silhouette barely visible at the very edge of my headlights. Chance didn't make a sound. They continued walking until they were about 30 feet away from my car. I couldn't make out any distinct features. They were just tall, 6'5", maybe 6'6". At this point, no cars had passed me going east since I had pulled over. So after the initial shock of seeing another person, my first thought was,
that's what I'm saying.
Where
No
did
lights.
this person come from?
Crazy.
They just stood there,
Crazy
unmoving, staring at us. Chance still didn't make a sound, but he was now staring at the figure ahead like I was. I won't lie, I was scared shitless. Who was this person? Where did they come from? And why were they just staring at me? Why isn't Chance barking at them like he does everything else that moves? I put down my spare tire and hesitantly asked, "Hello?" I was still hoping that my eyes were playing tricks on me. No response. They didn't move a muscle. It was under 10 degrees and they weren't even shivering. "Hello?" I asked again, a little louder this time. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if this person requires assistance more than I do. I open my mouth to speak again, when I finally hear something. "Do you need help?" The man faintly asked me. For the first time, I can tell that it was a man, based on his voice. It wasn't as deep as you might expect from a man his size, which struck me as odd, but he still hadn't moved. "Where did you come from?" I asked. "I didn't see any taillights in front of me, and no one has passed me since I pulled over. How long have you been out here?" I started walking towards the front of my car slowly, the tire iron clenched firmly in my hand. The man made no visible movements, but again he said, "Do you need help?" I stopped walking and tried to get a better look. I couldn't make out any physical features, but I could tell he wasn't dressed for winter. I was in sweatpants, a winter jacket, and was still freezing. But here was this man wearing a short-sleeved shirt. He kept his face pointing down the whole time. At this point, I'm really starting to freak out. "Do you need help?" This time, his voice sounded all wrong, as if he was struggling with each word. I started inching my way around the front of my car, to the driver's side door. If nothing else, I could get in my car and lock the doors. I still had my tire iron, but I never thought of myself as a physically impressive person, and I knew that if it came down to it, this tire iron may not help me overcome the difference in stature. He spoke again. "Do you need help? Do you need help? Do you need help?" His voice becoming more urgent. He finally takes a step towards me, still repeating, "Do you need help? Do you need help?" He was speaking faster. I quickly moved around the car and found the driver. He was speaking faster. I quickly moved around the car and found the driver's door handle. Just as I'm about to pull it open, a light appears behind me. I instinctively turn around to see a pair of headlights coming my way down the interstate. Chance starts barking loud. I whip back around, expecting to see the man closing in on me. But he was gone. Chance was still barking. "Hello?" I yell out, but there was nothing. No breathing, no movement, no response. I stood there for a couple of seconds, unsure of what was happening. The car coming down the highway passes me. They don't stop. I can't blame them. Would you stop for a random car on the side of a desolate road? I didn't even think about waving them down. I was still trying to process what happened. Did I imagine that whole thing? I walk ahead, approaching the area where the man was standing. There was footprints in the snow. They began where the man was standing, stretching into the distance down the road. I still held my tire iron. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and followed the footsteps. They went for about 10 feet, then turned. They went right off the road to the south and disappear. Now, I'm not stupid enough to go following footsteps through the Utah wilderness in the middle of the night. But damn it, I was curious. More headlights coming up from behind me brought me back to my senses. I went back to my car, changed the tire, and was back on my way, albeit at a much slower pace. The rest of the trip was as uneventful as the beginning, and I didn't feel the need to mention the encounter to anyone. Sure, it was freaky, but I still wasn't altogether convinced that I didn't imagine the whole thing. It was late, and I had been driving for almost 9 hours straight.
9 hours straight.
But I will tell you one thing for sure.
9 hours? Oh my goodness, boy.
I definitely don't want to drive that way again to find out.
You get your new dog.
So my trucking route is from here in Connecticut all the way down to Kentucky and Tennessee. It's a pretty good run. I get to see pretty much all the sights the East Coast has to offer, but there's one area of the country that gets pretty wild, and that's the area around the Appalachian Mountains. You guys probably know that it's one of the poorest areas of the country, one that got really screwed over as the coal mining jobs started to dwindle and the local economy went down the pooper. I really feel for the people down there. Seeing how entrenched in poverty some of the families are is just heartbreaking. So I was rolling through an area of the state that I hadn't previously been through, thanks to my usual section of highway being blocked off by some huge traffic accident that had unfortunately left a few people dead. I was having some trouble navigating the roads after my phone ran out of battery, and wouldn't you know it, the plug charger decides to give out too. Worst timing ever. But I was an experienced truck driver, and I wasn't driving on an 18-wheeler on that particular run, so I was free to take some of the smaller roads to find my way around. But despite the fact that I consider myself pretty good on the roads, there was a point that I found myself hopelessly lost, and I started to worry that I wouldn't make my shipping delivery deadline. That would mean disciplinary proceedings and whatnot, and I just couldn't afford those at all. Anyway, I happened to see this one guy wandering down the side of the road, so I slow my truck, wind down the window, and ask him for directions. The guy seems friendly enough and is more than willing to take a few minutes to give me all the information I need on how to make it back onto the main highways that headed south. But then I start asking him if there's anywhere nearby that I'd be able to get some lunch, as it was getting towards 1 in the afternoon and I'd only managed to get myself a pretty meager breakfast. The guy seems to think for a minute, scratching his head, taking an unusually long time to think of an answer to a question that usually takes like seconds to answer. It's rare to be anywhere in West Virginia where there isn't a Cracker Barrel within a few miles, so why he didn't just point me in the direction of one of those was beyond me. When I pressed him, he told me he knew of an old family-run place that did the best chicken fried steak in the entire county, maybe even the state. Suddenly, all was forgiven. I might be a northerner, but I'll be darned if I turned down a good chicken fried steak. All that was taking so long was for him to try and remember the best way there that wouldn't take me down some run-down old dirt road, one which might get my truck stuck on it, which really would have left me screwed. So after a minute, he gives me some pretty detailed directions towards an old strip mall.
Oh, dang, my leg.
He told me it was mostly abandoned, but that restaurant was still there, along with a few other small businesses, and not to pay any mind if the place seemed quiet during lunch, as it did the majority of its business in the early to late evening. I was happy enough, thanked the guy, then set off following the directions he'd given me. It took me a little while to find the old strip mall the guy was talking about. It was honestly a little frustrating to drive past a couple of chain restaurants and whatnot, given that I was so hungry. But man, if I wasn't craving some of that country-style chicken fried steak, and if it was a family-run place, then all the better. That chain restaurant stuff just doesn't cut it compared to a real home-style cooking.
Facts.
But eventually I actually find this run-down old strip mall the guy seemed to be talking about, and it was little wonder the place was in such a state of disrepair. It was way off any highway. There was absolutely no signage for it, literally nothing to let anyone know it was there. But even worse, I saw zero indication that there was any kind of restaurant open in any of the units. I wasn't about to give up so easily, though, as I did see one place that had a big old sign over it saying something like Mama J's Country Kitchen, or some variation on that, so my hopes were restored. That's when I see a guy open up the door of the place, stepping out into the afternoon heat and staring over at my truck. I gave him away from the driver's side, overjoyed that I was finally about to get some decent food on what had been a long, lonely drive from Connecticut. I figured he hadn't seen me do it, that the sun was obscuring his vision or something, just because he continued to stare back at me. Anyway, I get out of my truck, lock the doors, and start walking over to the restaurant. I call out to the guy like halfway across the parking lot, asking if they were indeed open for business. Again, the guy doesn't react. He just keeps staring at me in a way that I now notice is distinctly unwelcoming. Something in my gut just told me to stop walking. I had this creeping feeling all over my body, like something was telling me that something was horribly wrong with this whole setup. And no sooner had I started feeling distinctly vulnerable than the guy reached behind his back, pulls something out of his back pocket, and puts it on his head. I thought it was like a woolly hat at first, but then he pulls it down. It's like a balaclava.
Oh!
And then I notice something else in his hand, a small revolver. I turn and start running back towards the truck, and as I do, I see a few other guys emerging from the derelict units, each running towards my truck to try and cut me off. Each had some kind of weapon in their hand, be it a knife or an iron bar, and seeing those just made me run even faster.
I'm your mother's friend with benefits.
What? But what I just... But what I just...
Thank God I'd gotten that gut feeling when I did, otherwise they'd have definitely made it to my truck before I did. I threw the door open, jumped inside, and locked the cab behind me, trembling as I rummaged in my pocket for the keys. The bandits surrounded the cab of my truck, hitting the chassis with their weapons and demanding I get out. Then the guy with the gun aimed that thing right at my face through the windshield, screaming for me to get out of the truck. I had no choice but to do what I did.
He shot
I
at
gunned the
you?
engine and plowed the whole bunch of them, knocking down those that didn't jump out of the way in time. I leaned down in my seat as I gripped the wheel, out of pure instinct, really, and again, I thank God that I did. Because when I hit the guy with the gun, he let loose a single shot that shattered the windshield and struck the seat just above my head. I circled around the parking lot, expecting the next shot to come at any moment, but only the bandits that had gotten out of the way of my initial truck charge were chasing me. 2 or 3 were just lying on the concrete, rolling around in pain whilst holding onto their limbs. I think that's about the only thing that saved me, having the presence of mind to just ram them instead of trying to reverse out of there. If that had been my choice, I might not be around to tell you all this. I got out of that parking lot, speeding off blindly in the first direction I could, until I found somewhere to safely park up and call the cops. The sheriff's deputy I spoke to told me to swing on by the department when I was next able to so I could give a statement, and I did so, but not until I actually managed to get myself some lunch, as not even the terror of almost getting hijacked could dull my appetite. I guess that makes me sound pretty fat or whatever, but you guys need to appreciate just how hungry I was. Down at the department, however, I learned that I was not the first truck driver to have run into these bandits, how I'd been just unlucky enough to ask directions from one of their kinfolk who had directed me to the rundown strip mall just before calling his buddies to let them know I'd be there. At least, that's the only conclusion we came to once I described the guy I'd asked directions from. The deputy just seemed to nod knowingly when I related this guy's physical description. I guess I'm just warning you guys to be very, very careful when you're out on the roads. And although it seems like some tired old cautionary tale from your Facebook posting aunt, be careful when you're talking to strangers. There's no way of knowing just who they really are.
It's crazy.
A couple of years ago, one of my closest friends relocated cross-country with his long-term girlfriend to work a job he couldn't refuse. The only issue he had was that he didn't want to fly his dogs out with him when they made the move, since they'd be staying in a hotel for the first month. He was also a bit reticent to fly them out due to health concerns for both pets. By the time he located a home to rent, he was missing his furry babies and made the request of his sister, another close friend, and myself to drive them to him in LA. Now, we are Chicago folks, so the trip would be a long one. However, with the 3 of us to foot the near 30-hour drive, it would be a piece of cake.
Man,
We left early and drove long hours.
I ain't driving no 30
Along
hours.
the way, it was decided between my friend and I that we'd foot the majority of the drive ourselves, and if we needed to, we'd let our friend's sister do some driving. We were in a bit of a time crunch due to a snafu with the rental agreement, so we didn't have the luxury to stop very often past an 8-hour stay at a Denver La Quinta Inn. As for the journey itself, it was relatively smooth, barring getting pulled over right before entering Utah for driving 2 miles in the left lane of an empty highway. Whoops. From that point, we made it through Utah, Arizona, and Nevada without much problem until we entered California in need of gas. I had been driving for the majority of the first day and tagged my buddy in after being pulled over. I remained in the shotgun seat as navigator, searching through the GPS for a fuel stop. We kept our eyes peeled for road signs and discovered a sign pointing to Yermo Ghost Town, or something along those lines, which had a mobile station. How wonderful. It was convenient too, as it wasn't located almost directly off of the interstate.
Yo.
We rolled in on a little more than fumes when we approached the pumps. Normally we'd let the dogs out at every rest stop, but having stopped not long before then, and with both dogs sleeping snugly in the back, I decided to pump gas without anyone else leaving the vehicle. My buddy pulled up on the opposite side of a beat-up green sedan with a short, plump gentleman who just turned in to approach the shop. I noticed a few other hoopties at the pumps, all unoccupied, and there were a couple of other cars parked up near the station, most likely belonging to the employees, so nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until I swiped my credit card. The pump rejected my first swipe attempt, which I chalked up to a misread. I swiped again, and the pump read, "Please see attendant." I was annoyed, but we needed gas. I tapped on the window and told my buddy what I was going to do and asked if anyone needed anything. After taking their orders for Gatorade and Marlboro Reds, I walked up to the store to make a mental note of how strange this gas station was. Kind of quiet, especially for one right off the interstate, but it's no matter. As I walked in, though, more weirdness. First thing I noticed is that there were some boxes of chips just left on the floor, like someone was stocking shelves and just quit. As I veered to my right, I noticed immediately that there was no one milling about in this place. With the 6 cars besides my own out there, I felt like I would see someone. Things got even weirder when I realized that there was no one behind the counter, no customers or workers. And then it dawned on me, what happened to that gentleman who was at the pump adjacent to mine? Surely they can't all be in the bathroom. This is where I began to feel this gnawing sensation in my stomach. Something isn't right. I have always been a person who felt like I could always trust my instincts, and those instincts were screaming at me to just get the hell out. I want to run, but I hold back. I would look suspicious booking it out of the gas station that was empty and decide to just play it cool. Natural. Don't let your body language let on to how badly you're freaking out in your head. I was probably inside of this gas station for only a couple of minutes when I left, but I stopped just before exiting to listen for something. Anything. A flushing toilet would have been a good sound, but nothing. As I exit the shop and see my car, I begin to feel dread. It's like that moment in the movie where the hero is about to make it to the end of their trial, but the celebratory fanfare disappears, and in that silence, something comes and strikes them down. I'm about 25 yards from the car when I see this gentleman come out from around the side of the shop opposite of me. This is not the same man as I saw while pumping gas. He was larger and had a peculiar look on his face. And the best way I could describe it was like Nick Cage's smile from Face Off before the titular act had occurred. I continued walking towards my car, but when I turned back to look at him, he was now walking towards me with a purpose. At this point, I got the fuck back to the car with increased urgency in my step. And of course my friend has the door to the car locked like a complete douche clown. There is also the 95-pound golden retriever sitting in my seat. Apparently my travel companions did not notice how freaked out I was, or the creepy gentleman still walking in my direction. I punched the window and told him to unlock the fucking door, to which he only half rolls down the window to tell me the dog was in my seat and they were afraid she'd jump out when I opened the door. I reached my hand in and threw the dog towards the back seat as hard as I could while my friend is just now realizing how freaked out I am. He started the car and drove off quickly. I took one last look back and see Nick Cage had stopped about a pump away from where we were, still with that same look on his face. We found another gas station further down the road, this time with a ton of people inside and out. After thoroughly creeping out my friends with a story as I pumped gas, we made our way back to the interstate, which meant passing that gas station again. It's been about 15 minutes since we pulled out initially, and we go silent as we notice that those very same cars are still sitting in the same spots where we had left them. After thoroughly freaking out for a few miles, I received a phone call from my credit card company about $100 charge at a mobile station. The lady on the phone was really helpful in fixing the situation for me, and was as entirely creeped out by the situation as we were. In the end, we made it to LA and had a great vacation, but it still bothers me as to what the hell was going on at this little gas station off the highway, and what the hell was that smiling man's story.
This experience...
Yeah, Twine, but he definitely scaring you with that gas station trip, bro. They got a fake thing on that gas station, bro. Classmate. Home Alone. Alright, y'all, which one y'all want? Home Alone or Classmate? Which one y'all want, bro? Which one y'all want? Talk to me. Home Alone. Classmate. Home Alone. Home. Dog, brother. I'm sorry, brother. Damn. But you already getting done dirty, bro. you.
I had the extreme misfortune of breaking both of my legs at the When I was 17, I had the extreme misfortune of breaking both of my legs at the same time.
Well, how you break both of your legs at the same time? Yo, did I hear that right? He broke both of his legs? Hold on. Both of them?
When I was 17, I had the extreme misfortune of breaking both of my legs at the same time. I had been playing football with some of my friends out behind my house in a wide open field.
Fell out the monkey bars?
There was a barn that had been abandoned and was slowly rotting away. The way the barn was built, it was nestled right onto the side of the hill.
What the freak?
So you could walk around the far end of the barn, climb up the hill, and walk onto the roof. I was being a bit of a dick during the game, and I deliberately ran through what we had marked as out of bounds and ran up the hill and across the barn roof, intending to leap down off of it and score a bogus touchdown. But due to the rain, the wooden roof beams were wet and soggy, and when the wood gave out under my feet, I crashed downwards through the ceiling and landed hard on some old farming instruments, including...
Dang, y'all see his legs? Dang!
Buckets, a set of horseshoes, and a spare tire for an old tractor. I'm actually pretty lucky that I didn't get impaled by a pitchfork or anything. To make a long story short, I broke both of my legs, dislocated my left arm, and had a concussion. I was rushed to the hospital.
Oh, what? He dislocated his left arm, concussion, and broke both his legs. All because he want to score a touchdown in an unethical way. Yo, this is why you be ethical, bro.
Hospital and was discharged in a wheelchair, where I was forced to stay on the ground floor of my house. One night, my parents and sister decided that they wanted to go see the new Lord of the Rings movie that was playing, and kind of without warning, they said they were leaving. I found myself in the house alone. At first, I didn't mind. I had complete control of the TV and could play my video games as loud as I wanted to. But before long, I got frustrated. Most of my games were upstairs where I couldn't get them, and couldn't reach the microwave or most of the higher cabinets from my wheelchair, so I was very limited on what I could do, and I began to feel very bitter. I rolled myself into the dining room without turning on the lights, and peeked out into the backyard, out across the field and into the barn. I'm not sure why I wanted to look back there. It was dark out, and there wasn't much to see, but I'm the type of guy who always has to be aware of his surroundings, in order for my mind to be at peace. I looked out at the stars for a few moments, and was about to roll myself backwards, and return to the kitchen.
Listen, if you're learning piano...
Dang, man. I feel bad for Buddy, bro.
Saw something. By the light of the moon, I saw two figures walk out of the barn and make their way towards my house. I froze, too nervous to even let the curtain fall back in place. I made myself stare back towards the approaching figures. They weren't just walking, they were holding hands. I remember speaking out loud. Are those kids? I felt most of the fear melt away and was replaced by rage. Who were these brats trespassing on our property at 9 o'clock at night? We lived in a pretty secluded area, and it would have taken quite a lot of walking through the woods, in the dark, to enter our backyard from that direction. That's when I made my first mistake. I opened the window and called out to them.
Why you open the window?
Hey, what are you doing? Both figures immediately stopped in their tracks.
Now, why would you open the window? You already have no legs and you have no left arm, bro. You was at 1 HP. And you decide to antagonize people who is trying to rob you. That's the most, you know what? Yo, I can understand if he fully healthy, right? I can understand if he had his legs on. He have no legs. He have one good arm, bro. Y'all, he just got a concussion, but that means his head not even in the right place. You was literally at 1 HP. Like, you really cook.
Max, still holding hands, but otherwise keeping completely still. "Get out of our yard," I called out. There was perhaps 5 seconds of silence before one of them called out in a voice so calm it made all the terror and fear come rushing back. "Can we come in?" The voice sounded muffled, and at this point...
Stalker, what can he possibly do with no legs and one arm? Please explain that to me, bro. What can he do?
My eyes had adjusted to the darkness. Now that I had a better look at them, I could tell that they weren't kids. I would say that they were probably teenagers, wearing white porcelain masks that had these sadistic painted smiles on them. My response died in my throat, and my hands began to shake. I slammed the window shut and wheeled myself fast back across the dining room and into the living room. I shut off the TV and lights, casting the house into darkness, and rolled into the den. I got out of my wheelchair and crawled across the floor to the window and peeked out. They were both at the same spot, still holding hands, still staring right at the house. I watched them for a few more seconds, and then one of them raised their hand and waved at me. Not in the general direction of the house, right at me. I ducked back and started freaking out and cursing. I hadn't turned on any lights. There was no way they could have seen half of my face peeking out at them from the distance in the dark. I had no idea what to do, and I didn't know if all the doors were locked, if the garage door was shut, or even when my family would be back home. I felt completely helpless, knowing that I didn't have the strength or ability to check every room in the house to make sure it was locked up tight. I went to the phone on my desk and frantically called my mom's phone, but her cell was off. She was likely in the movie. Same thing with my dad. I thought about calling the cops, but I didn't know exactly what to tell them. Sure, there was 2 people trespassing on my property, but they hadn't threatened me or attempted to break in yet. I didn't know how to put into words the sense of urgency and danger I felt. I crawled back to my wheelchair and rolled myself through the darkness and into the hallway that separated the living room and kitchen. That's when I heard a knock at the door.
They call 911.
And I heard a muffled voice ask, "Can we come in?" I turned away from the front door and made my way towards the stairs, intending to climb them on my hands and knees, crawl to my room, and lock myself in there. My front door had a strip of narrow windows turning vertically down along the doorframe, and when I was nearly at the stairs, a masked face appeared through one of the windows, and shortly after I heard giggling. Upon making eye contact with the mask, the person crooked their head to the side. I froze like a deer in the headlights. All I could do was stare back. I remember it so perfectly. As I'm typing this, my hands are shaking. The mask disappeared from view, and that's when I noticed the deadbolt to the front door was unlocked. All anyone had to do was turn the knob, and they could walk right in. Then there was a knock on the back door, and another small muffled voice. I could barely hear what it said because of the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I shut my eyes and buried my face into my hands. I heard rattling coming from the back door. I'm not very religious, but in that moment, I prayed to whoever would listen. I'm not sure how long I sat there, crying, and waiting for one of the doors to open. But after what felt like 10 minutes, I looked up. There was no one peeking through the window at me. I slid out of my chair, crawled slowly to the stairs, and into my room, where I shut the door and locked it. I'm not positive about this last part, but right before I shut the door, I glanced down in the dark hallway, and I thought I saw the shadowy outline of a dark figure slowly tiptoeing up the stairs. I locked the door and proceeded to suffer through the longest night of my life. I never heard anything else from either inside the house or outside. My parents and sister arrived after 1 a.m., and by that time my shirt was soaked through with sweat. They thought by the look on my face I had suffered a stroke or something, and nearly called the ambulance for me. I never saw these masked people again. Of course, my parents didn't believe me. Why would they? There was no evidence that someone had broken in. It was just much easier for them to conclude that I just had a nightmare. My legs have since healed, and even though I still walk with a slight limp, there was otherwise no permanent damage. If I had to choose though, I would rather break both of my legs again, just to avoid the feeling of helplessness and terror that I felt that night when I looked into the hollow black eyes of that porcelain mask.
That's crazy.
Whoa.
That's crazy, bro.
Number 1.
Man, what type of man, who is narrating this, man? Come on, I don't want to hear this, bro.
Back in the 1970s, my uncle used to spend a couple of weeks in his hunting cabin that was in the middle of nowhere up in Canada. Most of the time, his trips were very relaxing and enjoyable. He would head back home afterwards feeling refreshed, having unplugged from society for a bit. He used to tell me that he had some of the best moments of his life sitting on his front step, watching as the stars faded from the sky and the dawn appear on the horizon. He was a real man of the earth, who enjoyed being one with nature. I'm surprised he never sold his condo and went full Amish. There was one year that nearly derailed his loner lifestyle and scared him so much, he nearly sold the cabin and never went back. It's the most popular story circulated through my extended family, and the reason I always triple check my locks before going to bed. Now, for some context, the cabin wasn't accessible by vehicle, and there was a small amount of hiking involved to reach it. It was about 400 square feet and was made up of a single room. There was no running water and no electricity. It was a wooden structure built upon a small stone foundation, and because of this, there was about a 12-inch space between the ground and the floor of the cabin. There was a trapdoor by the fireplace where he would drop extra logs of firewood, so he wouldn't have to venture outside to collect more. The incident happened in October. It was extremely cold even by Canada standards. When he wasn't at the cabin, he had the front door locked with a padlock, but upon entering, the first thing he noticed was the hint of tobacco in the air. This confused him, because he didn't smoke, and he hadn't been in the cabin since January. But he shrugged it off and got himself settled in. His first order of business was to get a fire going. He lit the lanterns, unpacked, pulled up his chair to the fire, and fell asleep. He woke up several times during the night, always in a state of panic, as if the chair was tipping over and he was falling. But the wind was roaring so hard outside, and the cabin walls were creaking so much, he shrugged it off as paranoia. He eventually left his chair and got into bed. He awoke one more time that night. When dawn was just beginning to peek through the window, he shot up in bed when he heard a loud roar of the wind, and through his haze of sleep, he thought he saw a figure outside the window. He scrambled out of bed, knocking over his chair, grabbed his hunting rifle and bolted across the room and flung open the front door. Fresh snow had fallen during the night, but there weren't any signs of footprints outside. He slammed his door shut, put down his rifle and muttered a few profanities as he righted his chair. He opened the trap door, grabbed a few more logs and put them on the fire, and then went back to bed. It should be noted that the lantern was burning low when he woke up, as was the fire, so there wasn't much light in the room. At about 9 a.m., my uncle woke up to the sun shining brightly through the cabin windows. He got up, warmed some water for coffee by setting the kettle down on the shelf over the fire, and then opened the front door. He said what he saw next nearly gave him a heart attack. There were footprints in the snow leading away from the cabin's front door. My uncle, being his normal impulsive self, threw on some clothes and boots, grabbed his rifle, and followed the footprints through the trees with his gun up, ready for confrontation. The footprints circled up the surrounding hills, and my uncle followed them to a spot where the entrance of the cabin was in plain sight. The intruder had clearly crouched for a long while. Then the tracks made off at a good stride further into the woods. Based on the boot size of the footprints, the stranger was just as large as my strapping 6'3" uncle, if not larger, and was clearly expecting my uncle to notice his tracks and come after him, or else he wouldn't have stopped to watch the cabin. He would have continued to run and make his escape. My uncle didn't want to fall into any kind of trap, so he fired a single shot into the air as a warning, and made his way back to the cabin. Once inside, he locked the door and opened the trap door by the fireplace. As he poked his head down, he scanned the area under the cabin with a flashlight and discovered one of his own blankets in a dirty, tangled mess in the corner. There were a couple of empty soup cans he recognized from his own pantry, a single spoon, and several dozen small bones, most likely squirrels or rabbits. What my uncle thinks occurred was that somehow an intruder had broken into the cabin while my uncle was away and had been hiding under the floor the entire time he had been there the previous day. He came to the conclusion that the reason he kept being jolted awake the night before was because half of the chair had been resting on top of the trap door, and whoever was below was trying to escape by lifting the hatch. Later on, when my uncle thought he saw a figure outside the window, he later realized that the figure had actually been inside and was heading for the door, but was interrupted, and the man had likely leapt back down through the trap door when my uncle sprang to life and noisily knocked over his chair. The creepiest thing about all of this wasn't the fact that a complete stranger was hiding so close when my uncle thought he was alone. It was the fact he was hiding in the first place that really calls into question who he was and what his motives were. It was never confirmed how the man broke into the cabin, but was already under the floor when my uncle arrived, which tells me he was going to great lengths to make sure that he wasn't discovered. When he finally emerged from under the floor, he could have killed my uncle in his sleep, but he took the opportunity to run. It's possible that he simply decided that he didn't want to risk a struggle, but I think whoever he is, he was on the run, or at the very least, had something to hide. Earlier the same year in May, not very far away, a 17-year-old girl had gone missing while walking up the road to visit her cousins, and shortly after in August, a 21-year-old woman was found stabbed to death on the very same road the girl had disappeared on. I believe whoever was in my uncle's cabin could very well have had something to do with one or both of these unsolved crimes. My uncle never reported the incident to the police, and to the best of his knowledge, the intruder never returned. But it makes me wonder to this day.
It's crazy.
Ever really alone when we think we are? Because if someone could be hiding under the floor in an isolated cabin during the winter, is it really impossible that there could be someone under your bed right now? I used to live in a 2-story house in Boise, Idaho. Both floors were meant to serve as a single bedroom apartment. I lived on the second floor, and the floor beneath me was vacant. I entered and exited the apartment through the back deck, and would walk down a wooden stairs to the driveway. There was a door in my living room that led downstairs to the second apartment, but it was deadbolted from my side. In turn, there was a door at the bottom of the stairs that was deadbolted from the other side. The entire time I lived in the second floor apartment, I never had anyone living underneath me. I would occasionally ask the landlord why that was, and he would always shrug and say that the building had a bad reputation. It had caught fire in the late 80s and 2 people had died downstairs. One extremely stormy evening, I was watching football in my living room when the power went out. I sighed and gathered some candles and a flashlight and decided that I might as well turn in early, even though it was only about 9 o'clock. I climbed into bed, but since I wasn't very tired, I spent a good hour tossing and turning. When 10 o'clock finally came around, I was about ready to get out of bed and just start making shadow puppets with my flashlight, just to pass the time, when I heard a door slam from somewhere in the house.
Oh, nah.
I shot up in bed. I knew for a fact that I was alone in my apartment, and no one was supposed to be downstairs. The next second, I heard heavy feet charging up the stairs from the downstairs apartment, and someone had begun putting their way into the door that led into my living room. I leapt out of bed and grabbed my cell phone to call the cops. I locked myself in my bedroom and frantically told the operator that there was someone in the house trying to get into my apartment. There came a tremendous banging on the other side of the door, like someone was wielding a sledgehammer or an axe, trying to break it down. The operator confirmed that she could hear what was going on, and that the police were on their way. I stayed on the line for what felt like another hour, hysterically telling the operator who my parents were, and to tell them I loved them in case I died. In retrospect, I probably should have just grabbed my keys and simply leapt out of my bedroom window and into the driveway and floored it out of there in my car. But I wasn't exactly thinking straight. I was convinced that I was about to die. When the police arrived, their wailing alarms drowned out the noise of the thunder and rain. They breached the house from the ground floor, and I heard them beneath me screaming, "Police! and the noise on the staircase abruptly stopped. I heard more of the policemen on the back deck, knocking on the glass of the sliding door, and I ran out of my bedroom to let them in. Before I could even ask if they caught the intruder, they quickly rushed me out of the house and into the rain, claiming that the house was on fire. I waited in a patrol car in my pajamas, pretty damn wet and upset as the policemen ran in and out of the building with flashlights. After the fire truck had arrived, a police officer got into the car with me and offered me a towel, and then started to ask me questions about the intruder. I told him all that I knew, which wasn't much. The officer then explained that upon entering the house, the bottom door of the stairs was deadbolted shut, as was my door at the top of the stairs, and there was absolutely no damage to either door. Upon entering the house, the officers were overwhelmed by the smell of smoke and immediately called the fire department, assuming there were flames raging inside the walls. Despite the smell, the firemen concluded that there was no fire anywhere, and besides myself, there was absolutely no evidence that anyone had been in the house. The landlord arrived shortly after, as I sat in my living room in the dark, drinking whiskey right out of the bottle, muttering about how I wasn't crazy. I definitely heard the sound of someone attacking the door. He told me that the previous tenants who lived downstairs had been a single father and his disabled son. One night, the son had accidentally set a fire to the carpet in the living room, and the father and son were both trapped in the stairway, unable to open the door to the second floor, and had died of smoke inhalation. I moved out the following month.
Rest in peace, man. That's damn.
This happened when I was in the second grade of elementary school. One night, my parents had to leave to attend a wake, and they left me home alone to house sit. They told me that I was in charge of the house. I was to eat dinner, take a shower, and go to bed. They said that they would be back after midnight. I'd never been alone in the house before.
When I got rear-ended right.
See, this what I be talking about. Why is second graders in the house by themselves, bro?
It's really strict.
Yeah, I remember last time it was 10-year-olds in the house by themselves. And second, how old second graders are? 8 years old? Why is an 8-year-old in the house by himself, man? Somebody call CPS for negligence, bro. Like, come on, bro.
We live in the rural countryside of Kyushu. Our neighbors are a couple of minutes away, so nights are usually very calm and quiet. I think it was about 8 or 9 o'clock. I had just finished watching a TV show, and the news came on. Boring, I thought. I guess it was time to take a shower and hit the hay. I was contemplating this massive decision while reading a manga comic laying down on the bed. Then I heard a knock at the door. Oh, my parents came back early, I thought, as I went to the door. I looked through the frosted glass, and I saw the big shadow of a person there. My mom was only around 4'9", so it couldn't have been her. Maybe it's my dad, I assumed. I called out, "Hello?" A deep male voice replied, "Hi, little girl. Is your dad home?" My dad was a bit of a drinker, and he often hung out with booze hounds. I thought that this might have been one of his pals or something, so I carelessly responded, "No, he's not here. He's at a funeral." There was a short pause. "And what about your mother?" I didn't know what to say. I knew my mom hung out with her friends, and they went drinking too, so maybe this guy knew both of them. But something told me not to reply. I felt a bit suspicious. What do I do? I thought that no matter what I would answer with, I might end up making another mistake, or getting into trouble somehow. "Mom's not home either," the voice persisted. This was so strange. We never usually had people coming to the house at this time of night. This wasn't right. There was something about his voice too. It didn't sound like the local accent. This wasn't good. I felt extremely anxious, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything in response. "Are you alone in there, little girl?" I began to cry silent tears while standing still and silent. "Can't you open the door for me? I have something I have to give to your dad. I'm just here to drop it off."
He said in a voice so extremely sickly, the kind of voice you hear when you're trying to coax someone into doing something. I mustered up enough strength to reply, "Can you come back tomorrow?" He didn't reply. He just started to violently turn the doorknob. I understood this man's intentions now, and it felt like an arrow of ice went through my heart. My throat closed up and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. Then came the sound of his fist punching the frosted glass.
They called 911.
It, he roared again and again. "Please stop," I pleaded. "It's so loud," I said. Then my brain kicked into gear, and I ran into the living room and grabbed the house phone. I didn't even know the number of the place where my parents were at. My parents had told me about people who will call the police when they don't need their help. Hoax calls. I was nervous, thinking I might get into trouble for one of these calls. While I was panicking about what to do, I heard the glass shatter in the hallway. He had breached the door. A horrible, thick arm shot through the hole. I remember he was wearing a jet black jumper. I screamed for help. I remember thinking this was more like a scene from a movie, not from real life. The arm was searching for the lock. While the arm was desperately probing for the lock, I heard another scream coming from outside. It was someone shouting my name, someone shouting that they called the police. I wandered over to the door and I saw the owner of the new voice. I jumped for joy. It was the voice of the older lady who lived next door. She had heard all the commotion and came to see what was going on. As she shouted that she called the police, the man ran for it. I let her in. I was inconsolable. I just bawled my eyes out the whole night through. The police arrived about 30 minutes before my parents came back. When my parents did come back, they apologized again and again for leaving me by myself. In the end, we didn't know who the intruder was. My dad assumed it was a robbery attempt. Just as a side note, our town is located along the East China Sea in Kyushu, and there are a lot of suspicious ships around the ports. In addition, my hometown is famed for many unsolved missing person cases. We never found the man, but I often replay that moment in my head over and over. Thanks to that man.
Hey, did you know you...
Crazy, bro.
Had countless sleepless nights. I don't like to think about what might have happened to me if my neighbor hadn't been there. We've become very close with our neighbors after this, and my parents never let me house sit again.
Crazy.
For almost a few years now, end of August 2019 to be exact, I had moved into an apartment in a different city because my mother, who I lived with in my hometown, passed away from cancer.
Rest in peace,
I've moved here with my long-term boyfriend and one other roommate. We all absolutely love it here. The location is great. It's a 15-minute bike ride from my university, and it's located at a square with a grocery store, drugstore, lunchrooms, and that kind of thing. So we have pretty much everything we could possibly need to survive within walking distance. However, after just a month or two of living here, someone has started to ring my doorbell at exactly 11:05 p.m. semi-regularly. Sometimes every day, sometimes every other day. Sometimes there's a week in between, and sometimes there's a couple of weeks in between. But it is always around 11:05 p.m., and every single time, I get no answer each time I ask through the intercom who it is. Except for one time, but I will get to that in a bit. At first, I thought it was friends from one of the neighbors who accidentally rang the wrong doorbell. But after around the fourth time, I grew suspicious. And after more than those 4 times, I started noticing that it always happens at either exactly 11:05 p.m. or a couple minutes earlier or later. My boyfriend and my roommate both work at bars, so they work until very late and would usually only get home around 2 a.m. So each time it happened, I was always alone at home. It started to really freak me out after a while. When I first told them about it, they kinda shrugged it off and said it was probably a wrong dial, much like I thought at first. But when I told them that it has happened so many times, and sometimes even daily, they didn't really believe me and that I was just being paranoid and spooked. However, one night, when the doorbell rang again, I answered the intercom asking who it was. I heard heavy breathing. I was thoroughly spooked at that moment. I was again home alone and kept asking who they were and what they wanted. I couldn't make up from the breathing if it was a man or a woman, but I heard a strange mumbling or whispering, and then it was dead silent. They had appeared to have left. I put my apartment door on a double lock after that. I was so scared and spooked out. Thankfully, my roommate got home a little earlier that night, around 30 minutes after the doorbell rang. He could tell how upset I was. Now with the whole pandemic crisis, my roommate and boyfriend aren't able to work anymore. They now also witness the frequent door ringing at 11:05 p.m., so now they do believe me and agree that it's very odd and creepy. We have a balcony that looks down at where our apartment building's main front door is, but because there's a shop underneath us that always has the awning out, the view to the door is partially obscured. Every time our doorbell rang, me, my boyfriend, and roommate would go over to the balcony to see if we could see anyone, but we never could. I've also asked my neighbors from my apartment building if their doorbell gets rang so often, but the ones that I asked all said it's never happened to them. So a few weeks ago, my roommate decided to do some investigating. He went outside our apartment building at 11 p.m., standing across the street. He pretended to have a smoke while keeping an eye on the door. He said he did see a man who looked kind of suspicious wandering around our apartment building. He slowed his pace down significantly as soon as he approached our door, but when he spotted my roommate looking at him, he quickly walked away. We aren't completely sure if that's the door ringer, but that was very, very suspicious. Our doorbell hasn't gone off at night since that day. I'm hoping that maybe it will stop now, but there is a possibility that it will continue again in a few weeks.
During the spring of 2004, I was 19, even though I looked about 14.
Hey, y'all, hold on real quick, y'all. I'm back.
I was 5'0" and weighed about 100 pounds. That's if I was carrying laundry. My parents and aunt were vacationing in Mexico. I had decided to opt out and house sit for my aunt. I figured it would be a nice opportunity to have a quiet place to study for my upcoming exams. And all I really had to do was clean the pool, collect the mail, and restock the fridge with groceries. I also had a plan of action that involved emptying her—
Oh, this is the wrong story.
To start, both my parents and I have grown up in a
y'all.
small southeastern town in Kentucky.
Yeah, this 7 school out on horror stories.
The landscape is quite rural, and the actual city seat only has one stoplight in it, even in 2019. For the most part, the area is peaceful, and it feels as if everyone knows each other. While this story doesn't involve the paranormal, it is extremely terrifying. A real-life nightmare, if you will. The story begins on September 18th, 1989 in the county's only high school. Both of my parents were teachers at this said school. My mother happened to be in her planning period and was sitting in her teacher's lounge with a few other personnel. Their planning was cut short when a fellow female teacher ran screaming immediately into the teacher's round, stating, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun!"
Oh, whoa.
Understandably, the teacher was too distressed to explain in detail and immediately ran screaming out of the lounge. Everyone immediately scrambled to escape or hide from the gunmen. My mother, a fellow teacher, and teacher's aide, ran into a small closet and attempted to hide. The closet was tiny, and along with 3 small women currently occupying it, was also home to a fold-away bed. No matter how hard they tried to close the door, the bed kept getting in the way. They were afraid to open the door and shove the bed out, as it would be a dead giveaway that someone was in the closet. After the initial shock, things began to quiet down in the school.
Listen, if you're learning...
It's insane, really, bro. Can't lie.
A few shots fired, but had no idea how close the gunfire was in proximity to them. They literally crammed like sardines in a hot closet, unsure when or if the shooter would come for them. Though they tried to remain silent, my mother did make a plea for their salvation, as it was almost certain they wouldn't make it out of the school alive. The time ticked away slowly, and after an hour of being in the closet, they began to hear footsteps. The footsteps were slowly coming down the hallway toward the room they were in. Soft sounds, clicking, as if someone was searching around the hallway. As they came closer, the footsteps stopped in the doorway of the teacher's lounge. It was almost as if they could feel a pair of eyes searching the room from top to bottom, looking for any sign of life. My mom and the other woman had their hands on the doorknob, trying to keep it closed as much as possible. They were almost certain this was the end. Suddenly, they heard the person walk away and enter a nearby bathroom. My father also had a free first block, so he was seated at his desk trying to catch up on grading student assignments. Suddenly, he heard a loud noise, which he said sounded like a large table falling over. He wondered at what the sound might be, but figured it was simply a table that had gotten knocked over or someone had dropped several textbooks. Unlike the teacher's lounge, my father's classroom was located upstairs in a smaller portion of the school. While he continued grading papers, he began to hear someone running down the hallway. It was a teacher that seemed to be searching through the classrooms. He stopped in the doorway and said, "One of the kids brought a gun and has taken hostages. We need to evacuate the other classmates immediately." My dad quickly said, "I'll take the right side of the hall and you take the left." They then set off running down the halls to notify teachers and students. However, most of the classrooms had already been emptied. They would find out later that many of the classrooms had heard the initial gunshots and realized instantly what the sound was. The first floor classrooms had tried to evacuate by either running to the far stairwell or jumping out the windows into the parking lot.
Jumping out the window? Damn!
The classroom doors had small windows in which you could see people passing outside. The classroom that was located across the gunfire had been too scared to exit into the hallway, at risk of being shot. The students were all jumping out of the windows in droves. The poor teacher was heavily pregnant, and the windows were quite narrow and only slanted slightly when they opened. It took a great deal of effort, but they got her out of the window. The students and teachers were scared for their life, not knowing if the shooter would suddenly barge into their room and begin shooting as they tried to exit. My dad eventually located a classroom that had not been evacuated. He ran over to the teacher and explained the situation. He then spoke to the students and told them, "You need to exit the school right now. Don't take your belongings. Don't go to the bathroom. Don't talk to anyone. As quietly as you can, take the far stairwell and don't look behind you. Go now." My dad is likely one of the most laid-back individuals you could ever meet. The students knew this and listened closely, knowing the situation was dire. Everyone rushed to the far stairwell, away from the gunman, and exited to the bus garage. Dad said that the police arrived within minutes of them emptying the building and corralled everyone over to a funeral home that was across the road from the high school.
Crazy.
Within 30 minutes, a SWAT team arrived and had set up a perimeter both inside and outside of the school. A family member had found out about the situation and called my grandfather, my mother's father. He had rushed to the school to check on his daughter and son-in-law. As my dad was waiting with the students in the funeral home parking lot, he began to search for my mother. My father asked one of the teachers that had been in the lounge with my mom if he had seen her. He said he thought she was outside. Dad once again searched through the crowd asking if anyone had seen my mother. By this time, my grandfather had arrived and asked my father where my mom was. He said that he couldn't find her. He again asked the teacher who had been in the lounge with her, and he said, "Well, come to think of it, I remember her saying that she might hide in the closet." Everyone was terrified of what might have happened to her, since it had been close to 3 hours since the gunman had entered the building. My father and grandfather notified some of the Kentucky State Police that were on the scene. Under the watchful eyes of snipers located in the parking lot and on the roof, the KSP officers entered the school and headed for the closet they thought my mother was in. My mother said that she and the other woman could hear someone outside, and they almost died of fright. Without announcement, the doorknob was suddenly ripped from their hands, and light flooded into the closet. Not hearing a cacophony of gunfire, my mom looked up and realized there were 2 armed state troopers standing outside the closet. She said that it was probably the best sight in her entire life. There were no times for tears of joy, though. The officers told my mother and the other 2 women, "You're going to be okay, but we need to get you out of the building ASAP. We need you to rush down the hallway, and when you come into the lobby to exit, you need to run." After a count, my mother was ushered from teacher's lounge toward the high school lobby. She said when she rounded the corner, there were multiple snipers set up in the hall along with a .50 caliber machine gun pointed at the classroom where the shooter was. That day, my mother had worn a dress and heels, and she said she could remember trying to run across the grass in her heels getting stuck in the soil. She kept running through until she joined the others in the funeral home parking lot. The initial takeover had begun around 9:50 a.m. during the first block of classes. The shooter had entered the school with 3 guns, 1 shotgun, a .357 pistol, and a .44 caliber Magnum, and walked into his first block class. Upon entering the classroom, he shot into the ceiling through the art classroom located above. Luckily, no one was hit by a bullet or debris of the initial shot.
This experience...
Bro, that is crazy. That is insane, bro. That is insane,
These
y'all.
2 rows of students and the teacher before settling in for a standoff. The woman that initially told everyone in the teacher's lounge about the shooting had been the teacher released from the classroom. Over the next few hours, students were released for small requests like cigarettes, soft drinks, and pizza. Multiple shots were fired throughout the ordeal, but thankfully no one was injured or killed. The shooter was later identified as a 17-year-old student at the high school, advised police that he would surrender if he could see his father. He told police that he hadn't seen his father since he was 4 years old. Around 5 p.m. that day, the last hostage was released. The Kentucky State Police eventually negotiated his surrender before his father could arrive from Florida. While most people never know the reason behind such an insane act of violence, upon questioning, the shooter referred to the Stephen King book Rage as his inspiration for the shooting. Crazy enough, my dad didn't think the student served any prison time. It was his belief that while the boy was initially taken to jail after surrendering, he was never tried and was instead released out of the county and told to never return. I guess 1989 was a different time. My dad says that word had quickly spread after the takeover, and that many parents had arrived to the scene and were looking for their children. One of them asked my father where his son was, and my dad wasn't for sure, and that's what he told the parent. However, he had been too afraid to tell him that he thought he was currently being held hostage. It turns out he was. Many of the students held hostage suffered from PTSD and had to undergo counseling for many years. Fortunately, no one was physically harmed, though. Once my parents were finally released from the scene, they had driven straight to my babysitter's to pick me up. Being less than a year old, I was oblivious to the chaos that my parents had experienced that day. They say when they saw me, they picked me up and prayed that the little girl would never have to experience anything like that.
Boy, they're not even carrying a baby. The baby floating.
If you really like my content and want to support me, please like this a wider audience. And that's why I'm surely...
When I was a senior in high school, during my last spring semester, I had taken all of the classes that I needed to take, and I had an extra hour during the day that I could use to just study. I had an entire classroom to myself for studying, but I would usually just play games on my phone. It was during my third period, so I couldn't go home early or anything like that, but it was still a nice break for me. One day, I got to my study hour and actually had some homework to do. I began working and went for about 20 minutes until I heard an announcement come over the school intercom. It was an announcement of a lockdown, and everyone was instructed to lock their doors and return to their classrooms if they were not in them. I wasn't quite sure if this was a drill or not at first, so I went over and shut the door. The classroom that I was in was in a wing of the school that was farthest from the locker commons and cafeteria, so I figured no teachers would come over there or hear anything. So I just went back to my homework. I will admit though, I was slightly scared, but really I thought nothing of it, because in my time at that high school, we had had 2 previous lockdowns, which were basically just false alarms. I was working on my homework when suddenly I heard a knocking at the door. I walked over to the door and saw a kid outside. I opened the door and he told me he had seen a guy in the hallway. The kid seemed to be in a panic, so I let him in the room and we locked the door. The kid explained to me that he went out for a drink of water and saw an older-looking creepy guy walking towards him. The kid wasn't able to get back to his original classroom because he would have to go past the creepy guy. I turned off the lights in the classroom and we both went to the back corner. We sat there in pitch-black silence for several minutes. I whispered over to the kid and asked him what his name was, but he appeared to be gone. Then there was another knocking at the door to the classroom. I was pretty scared at this point, but I slowly got up and walked over to the door. I listened on the other side and heard someone say police. I was shocked. I opened up the door to see several officers. One of them pulled me out of the room immediately. I was as confused as can be, but then I saw them go into the room and a short time later come out with the kid that I had let in.
Whoa!
They led him away and they told me that he had been the reason for the lockdown. As it turns out, he was a former student who had graduated 2 years earlier. He had gone to the school and had made several threats against the school, but was seen by a staff member shortly after entering. It really creeped me out knowing I had been alone in a classroom with him.
That's crazy, bro.
This story happened my senior year of high school, which was about 5 years ago now. That year, they added this new room at the back part of the school. I can't remember the exact name they used for the room, but it was basically just an area with several computers and tables, and it was used for giving students extra help with school or making up tests and things like that. It had been made out of an old abandoned classroom that wasn't used for several years. At this time, I had been out of school for 2 days with an ear infection, and in that time, I missed a math test. When I returned to the math teacher, he allowed me to make up the test during study hall, so I went to that new room to take it.
Yeah.
The teacher, Mr. Marcus, didn't want to have to go to the room and watch me take the test, so he let me go by myself and said he trusted me not to cheat. I walked all the way over to the room.
Hey, y'all, what y'all doing at the... Hey, listen, what y'all doing if the teacher said you can take the test, I'm not going to be over there, and I'm trusting you not to cheat? What y'all doing? Y'all going to cheat or y'all not going to cheat? What y'all doing? What y'all doing on that test, bro? What y'all doing on that, bro? Not gonna cheat? You cheating on that, mister? Boy, y'all got no morals, man. Boy, y'all tripping. Cheating. Boy, that's crazy.
Which was pretty much on the complete opposite end of the school. And once I got to the room, I sat down and began the test. It wasn't too long of a test, but it was a really important one. Right when I got to the third question, the telephone in the room started ringing. I didn't want to get up and answer it, but I figured it was probably Mr. Marcus. I walked over and picked it up. When I did, I was told we were under a lockdown and there was a suspicious person in the building. I was scared being all by myself back in this room with nobody else there, and there wasn't even a classroom next to me I could go to, because this classroom was between 2 locker rooms for the gym, which was also nearby. I did what I was instructed to do and shut the door. As I did, I decided to take a quick look out into the hallway. It was completely empty and quiet as well. I went back in and decided to turn off the lights. I went out of sight of the door and went towards the back. Then I took out my phone and used the screen to give me some light to try to do more questions of the test. However, I couldn't really focus with us being in a lockdown. Suddenly, I heard the door to the room that I was in open. It was at that moment that I remembered I hadn't locked the door.
You ain't locked the door?
Quickly, I ducked down underneath the table that I was at. I could see just barely from under the table a small amount of light coming in from the doorway and saw boots on the ground. At least they appeared to be boots, as I couldn't really see much. I was terrified, and I held my breath so that I wouldn't make a sound. Whoever was in there stood in the doorway for a while, and then the door shut. I barely heard footsteps walking into the room. I was literally shaking, trying not to make a sound. The room then went completely silent and remained that way. I slowly breathed in and out as quietly as I could. I was expecting at any moment to feel someone grab me from behind or something like that. But then, out of nowhere, I heard the sound of a computer falling off a desk to the ground. Then I heard the noise of a man yelling and screaming. It seemed as though whoever was in this room had gone into a rage and was screaming and smashing things. I opened my eyes and looked over. I still couldn't really see anything, but I could hear where all the noise was coming from, and it was at the opposite end of the classroom to my left. I was terrified and knew I needed to get out of there. The exit was directly in front of me and to the right, and the noises were directly in front of me to the left, so I figured I had to make a run for it. I took a deep breath, and then got out from under the desk and ran as fast as I could, as whoever was in there continued to seemingly destroy things in the room. I ran forward to the door, and was just barely able to see where I was going. I stumbled into a chair just before the door, but I was still able to make it out. I heard the man yelling as I left the room, and sprinted down the hallway. I ran all the way to the front end of the school, where I saw a police officer. I yelled where the guy was and that he was destroying things. Another officer led me out of the school. After some time, I was able to calm down and they ended up catching the man. I got to go home right after that. I feel so lucky that I made it out of that
what's
room,
good, Foz?
because obviously whoever was in there was very
You a little
dangerous.
late, ain't it? Yeah, you late. Nope, don't want to hear that.
In my freshman year
Well,
of high
you
school,
2 hours and
during the
13
first
minutes late.
semester, I had a civics class
You
as my
good,
last
though.
class
Don't
of the
don't
day.
let it happen again.
The school that I went to was pretty average size, I would say. I remember the class that I was in had about 20 kids in it. It was a couple of months into the school year at this point, and on this Thursday afternoon, we were all just listening to the teacher go through some announcements, when suddenly the phone in the classroom rang. The teacher, Mrs. Lindstrom, walked over and answered it. Then she hung up and told us all that the school was going under a lockdown. She seemed pretty serious and told us that this was not a drill. She locked her classroom door and then turned out the lights and instructed us to the back end of the classroom.
Turn on the light.
We all got up from our desks and went to the back. There was a lot of whispering going on, but nobody seemed to know why we were under a lockdown. The longer we all sat back there, the more concerned everyone seemed to get, which made me start to worry. I started thinking of all the possibilities of what could be going on. It got really quiet after a while, and at one point we heard footsteps going down the hallway, but we didn't know whose they were. The lockdown went on for probably 30 more minutes before there was another call to the classroom announcing that the lockdown had been ended. We returned to class for the final 15 minutes or so, but the only thing on my mind was what could have caused it. School was dismissed after that, and I left school to get on my bus. When I got outside the school, I noticed several police cars with flashing lights. Everyone was talking about the lockdown, and I heard several rumors about what it was, but it wasn't until later that night where I got the real answer. My friend Robbie, whose mother worked at the school, told me that the lockdown had been caused by a student who claimed to see a strange man wandering the halls. However, after an extensive search of the school, one of the back doors was seen to be open, and it was determined that the man had left. The area was briefly searched, but the man was never found. The next day, when I went back to school, everything seemed to be pretty normal, and by the time I got to third hour, I had forgotten all about what had happened the day before. It was a Friday, so I was pretty much just excited to go to the football game that night. In the middle of my third hour class, which was history, I had to go to the bathroom. I knew the teacher was one of the nicer ones who didn't require a pass or anything, so I just asked and she allowed me to go. I walked down the halls of the bathrooms, which are towards the end. As soon as I opened the door and got inside, I came face to face with a man who I had never seen before. He was wearing a winter hat and had long black hair and a small beard. He looked really surprised to see me. We both stood there staring at each other for a second or two. Then the man came towards me and I turned and ran. I ran back to class. When I got back, I told my teacher what I had seen, and the school once again went on another lockdown. This time we stayed locked down for over an hour. I was terrified, but finally it ended, and afterwards everyone was allowed to go home early. They told us the man had finally been caught, but what I don't understand is how they didn't find him the first time the school was locked down, and what he was doing inside there in the first place. In high school, when I was a junior, I took a psychology class. It was my second period of the day. I liked the class, and one of the best things about it was that we were able to take open book tests. The teacher was really chill and let us work together on stuff, including the tests. We also had an option to take the tests in study rooms, which I always did, because it was much more quiet and I just felt more comfortable in there. I was the only person in the class who did this though, because you needed a pass and the study rooms were all the way in the basement of the school. I guess most students just found that a hassle and would rather work with each other as well. Anyways, one particular Friday, when we had a test to take, I did the usual thing, which was to get the test from the teacher and then go down to the study room. It took me about 5 minutes to get down there. There wasn't a whole lot at all on that level of the school. Pretty much just the study rooms and then a couple of storage rooms and some old classrooms that weren't used. I got into one of the rooms and turned on the light. The rooms had carpet floors with a table and a few chairs in each one. They also had a little window for looking out into the hallway. I began the test and searched through my psychology book for the answers. I remember I had just reached question 15 when I suddenly heard over the intercom that we were entering a lockdown. I got a little nervous, but I told myself it was probably nothing. I turned the lights off like we were instructed to, but I didn't see a lock on the door. Our school was kind of old and these study rooms were sort of outdated. I went under the desk and decided to play some games on my phone to pass the time. Several minutes went by without anything happening. Then I heard some footsteps coming down the hallway.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
I got
Better
really
cut
nervous
that
knowing the
cut that
footsteps
off.
likely belonged to someone that wasn't supposed to be in the school.
Better cut that ring off, boy.
I turned my phone off and I got really quiet.
Better cut that ring off. Better cut that ring off. But where's my cursor? I don't even know where my cursor is, y'all. I couldn't even find it.
Steps went down towards the door of my study room. As I hid under the table, I slowly turned my head to look towards the window, and just as I did, I saw a man walk past it.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
All I could tell is that he was wearing a hooded sweatshirt, really. He walked past without looking in the window, but it still scared me a lot. Then I heard the door open in the room across the hall from mine, and then it shut. He must have gone in it, and at that point, I was seriously considering making a run for it. I was relatively fast, but I didn't know who this guy was. I was trying to psych myself up into running when I heard the door open once again and then shut. I buried my face into the ground and held my breath. I didn't really hear any footsteps though, so I lifted my head slightly to listen. I didn't know whether he had walked away or if he was just standing there. This made it much more risky for me to try to run away, so I decided to stay put for the time. Several minutes went by and I got more and more nervous. I decided once again I was going to try to run back upstairs, and this time I was going to actually do it. I didn't bother getting my backpack or anything, besides just my phone, wallet, and keys. I slowly crawled up the carpet to the door, and then stood up, careful not to make a sound. I then placed my hands on the doorknob. The second it started to turn, I heard it creak, and it sounded extremely loud. At that moment, I knew there was no turning back. I quickly left the room, and then headed down the hallways. Once I saw it was clear, I started sprinting towards the stairs, which were about 50 feet away. As I was running, I looked down one hallway to my right while passing by, and saw the man walking out of a room about 20 feet down the hallway. I ran even faster the rest of the ways and didn't look back. I sprinted up the stairs all the way back to my classroom. Once I got there, I pounded on the door yelling that it was me, and after about 10 seconds, I was let in. I told the teacher what had happened, and she alerted the principal. Police were able to get into the basement and locate the man, who was later found hiding in the same study room I had been in. Apparently, the man had broken into the school and beat up one of the teachers, then ran off. They had been searching the school, but hadn't made it to the basement yet. Every time I went near the basement of the school for the rest of my high school career, I would think about that day.
Crazy, bro.
This story happened in my freshman year of high school.
It's crazy, bro.
I had recently moved to a new city and was unfamiliar with things. It was kind of tough for me being at a new school and having to make new friends and whatnot. One day, I had to make up a test, so I went to the history department to take it during my study hall time. And when I was done, I had to make it up to my next class, which was geography. As I was walking, I heard over the speakers that we were on a lockdown. I tried to hurry and make it to my class, but I guess it was farther away than I thought, and it took me a little longer than I expected. The hallways were already completely empty because classes were in session. I got more and more nervous the longer I was out in the hallways because I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Then I saw a teacher come around a corner and see me. He looked surprised to see me, and I almost tried to run away, but I realized it would probably just get me in trouble. So I explained to the teacher I was just trying to get to my class. He said I shouldn't be out in the halls and that I was in trouble. He then told me to come with him, so I began to follow him down the halls. We walked to the end of the hall and down the stairs. Then he went to an exit of the school and started to walk out. I was a little surprised, but I figured maybe we were in a serious lockdown and we were supposed to leave the school. Just as we got out the door, though, the man grabbed my arm. Once he did, I got a terrible feeling. We walked a few steps into the parking lot until I heard a voice yell, "Hey," at us. Then someone yelled at the man to let me go. The man did and then took off running past the parking lot. Another teacher then rushed out to me and asked me if I was all right. I was fine, but very shocked at what had just taken place. The school stayed under a lockdown until they were able to make sure the area was clear. The school didn't have the best of security at the time, and the man had pretty much just walked right into the school. The scary part is, I don't know if he was ever caught.
Grabbing your arm is crazy, bro.
5 years ago, when I was in high school, we were having a very normal day. I was in my 5th hour class, which was my last class of the day, so I was excited to go home.
Talk to him.
It was gym class, and we happened to be outside playing Foursquare in one of the parking lots behind the school. It wasn't that long into the game when suddenly our teacher, Mr. Watson, told us all to stop our games and listen up. He announced that the school was in a lockdown and we all needed to go inside and he would get us to a classroom. I wasn't too excited about this, and I was afraid we would be locked down until after school was supposed to get out. Mr. Watson began waving us all inside, and as he was distracted, I saw an opportunity to run away and get to my car. I know it was a dumb thing to do, but I was scared of the lockdown, and I was already outside, so I decided to make a run for it. Mr. Watson didn't even notice me leaving, and I began making my way to my car. At our high school, it costed a lot of money to park in the school parking lot, so they had a free one that was farther away that I parked at.
The Tempur.
See, it always be these people. They be doing the most dumbest things you possibly can think of, bro.
The only problem was to get there, it was maybe about a 10-minute walk, and it went through the woods a little bit. I jogged down the path and through the woods. I had to stop and start walking to catch my breath from the run.
Crazy, yo.
I stopped to text my best friend Casey that I had left the school and asked what the lockdown was for. As I was standing there on the path, though, I started to hear some noises coming towards me. It sounded like another person running. I figured it was another student running away like I had to go to their car. I looked into the direction of the noise, and I could see through the trees where the path curved that it was a grown man running. Immediately, I got a bad feeling, and I jumped behind a tree in the woods. The man slowed down and came around the corner. I held my breath and hoped that he wouldn't see me. He had dark hair and a goatee, and walked a ways past me. He kept looking over his shoulder, and then it sounded like he went into the woods because I heard trees and brush being moved around. Then the noises stopped. I waited there and was hoping to hear him walk away, but I heard nothing. It sounded like he had gone just inside the woods, about 30 or 40 feet down the path from where I went in. The trees were pretty thick in this area, and it was a good place to hide, but I didn't dare move or make a sound. I really just wanted to go to my car and drive away. I realized the mistake that I had made by running from class now, but it was too late to do anything about it. I sat there for a few minutes, and I knew the man was still there, but I was sure that he hadn't seen me. I debated in my mind between running back to school or trying to make a run for my car, but they both seemed pretty risky, and I didn't want to take a chance. So I remained hiding there, trying my best to stay silent, because any movement I made would make noises with all the trees and branches in there. I occasionally heard noises from where the man had gone in, pretty much confirming to me that he was still there. After what had to be at least 5 to 10 minutes of hiding, I started to hear police sirens off in the distance. They got closer and closer and seemed to be heading for the school. The sound of those sirens made me feel a little bit safer and more brave, so I then decided I was going to run back towards the school. I took a deep breath, and on the count of 3, I made a run for it back to the path towards the school. I heard the man start to move in the woods when I started running, but I couldn't tell if he was chasing after me.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
I didn't look back at all and ran my fastest until I had made it up to the school. I saw the police officers arriving, and I ran up to one of them and told them about the man in the woods. They had me wait with some other officers for a while. The man had made a run for it, but he ended up being caught a short time later deeper into the woods. Apparently he had been trying to get into the school and had actually broken a window. My mom came and picked me up, and I had to get my car later when the area was cleared for us to return.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. That's crazy.
When I got...
It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy. Police ain't gonna do nothing though, for real. Y'all wanna see another school lockdown, or y'all wanna see fast food drive-through horror stories? If y'all want to see fast food, type in fast food. Y'all want to see school lockdown, type in school lockdown. What y'all want? Fast food, school. Fast food. School. It's a tie. It's a tie. Okay, it's a tie. I don't know what y'all want me to do. Okay. But we just gonna do fast food. I don't know. You know what? This hard, man. I don't know what to do. Well, I'll just do a dang y'all. Dang man, y'all. Oh man. Dang, brother, you keep losing, brother. It's 2-4. I got to pick school. I'm sorry, man. But to be fair, we did watch the school one. I don't know what to do. Man, y'all got me thinking. I don't know, man. I'm sorry, bro. We gotta do school again, bro.
It was a completely normal, boring school day. I was in 7th period math, and the clock showed 2:45 p.m., which means the school day was nearly done. As it was a Friday, and spring break was just around the corner, you could feel everyone getting antsy in their seats. A lot of people had tests and whatnot, whereas my class got to have fun. We had a super laid-back teacher who loved to entertain us as much as possible. We lucked out in that sense. Me and my girlfriend Haley were messing around in the back, talking about something that occurred earlier that day. When it happened, the alarm for the lockdown went off, and the principal came over the loudspeaker. Now, for some context, typically a teacher would yell lockdown 3 times if it was a drill. We were always told if it was 4 times, it was not a drill. The reason for this was to hide the fact that we knew someone was in the building with malicious intent. 4 times we heard the word lockdown. Now, I've gotten so used to hearing it only 3 times that I paid no attention to how many times lockdown was even said. The teacher did the usual, turning off the lights, closing the door, and ushering us to the back corner of the room where we couldn't be seen from the glass on the door. Our classroom had 2 doors, one at the front and one at the back. In the midst of all the commotion, me and Haley did the one thing you should never do in a lockdown. We snuck out of the class. We were now in the hallway on the 3rd floor. Everything looked so weird. Not a single person in sight other than the 2 of us.
Alright, question, y'all. I already knew the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask y'all anyway. Would y'all ever sneak out during the lockdown, bro? I don't know why somebody want to harm students at a school, but no, of course I knew it was no. But you right though, brother. This one do sound familiar. I don't know, mate. I don't know.
A sort of humming noise came from the walls, indicating the school had cut all the power. I thought this was weird, as I thought it was only a drill. Hey, why would they cut off the power if it's just a drill? I asked. This was when we really started to question if it was actually a drill or not. But with us being stupid teenagers, we brushed it off as nothing. We continued roaming the halls when we started to hear a sound. We got really creeped out by this, as no one was supposed to be outside the class. Fearing it was a teacher, we ran into the nearest bathroom to hide. We ran into the 4th stall that was tucked into the corner and hid. We sort of just sat there, giggling, thinking we outsmarted the teacher. Maybe about 30 seconds had passed, and we started to hear the footsteps again, but this time much closer. My heart froze. We could tell it was right outside the door. At this point, we were sure we'd been caught. We kept as quiet and as still as possible, hoping not to make a sound. It was really weird though. The person outside hadn't come in yet, but they hadn't left either. If they left, we would have clearly heard their footsteps leaving, but we never heard them. Haley pointed this out to me, and that's when we started taking the situation a bit more seriously. The door opened, and someone stepped in. I was about to walk out of the stall and apologize for sneaking off when Haley stopped me. She whispered to me,
"Isn't it protocol for teachers to ask if there's anyone in the bathroom?"
She was right. This wasn't normal teacher behavior, and that's when the heart-dropping realization hit us. Whoever was in the bathroom with us wasn't a teacher. While contemplating what to do, the silence was broken.
"I know you're in there."
My heart dropped as the person said that. The voice was younger, and it obviously wasn't a teacher. We were practically crying at this point, unable to hold it back. The guy was now directly in front of the stall door. He started pounding on the door and screaming like a madman. As this was happening, though, I heard the door open again, followed by the familiar voice of my teacher, Mr. Taylor.
"Hey, what the hell are you doing?"
I heard a scuffle outside, and I immediately rushed to aid my teacher. Eventually, we got the guy held down, and the cops were called. Apparently, the man was an escapee from a mental asylum near the school, and thankfully, no one got hurt. I don't know if any of you guys remember a few years ago when a sort of killer clown craze shook America for a few months. Well, this all happened during that time. I always remembered me and my friends thought it was funny, and we'd always watch those clown caught on camera videos that were really popular at lunch. Although, our laughter turned into fear when we were made aware that a few of those clowns on Twitter threatened to come to our school at 11 a.m. that day and quote-unquote kill all of us. Luckily, the school picked up on this, and they sent out emails to the parents.
Wait, y'all said we watched this before? Why is the asylum to the school? Y'all, I'm with you. I don't know. Y'all, we watched this before? Cause I ain't trying to watch the same videos, no. Okay, we probably did watch this then. Okay, cool. Okay, y'all. So we just gonna find another video. I'm trying to find some stuff. Dang, this video 32 minutes. Well, you might have been absent. All right, I'll watch it for you then. I'll finish it for you. I'll finish it for you first. But yeah, I think we did watch this though. It sounds familiar though.
That they had scheduled a planned lockdown at 10:30 that day in response to the threats. I was sitting in history class when I heard the familiar sound of the lockdown alarm, followed by the teacher rushing to the windows and door, locking and closing them. Even though initially the threat freaked me out, I wasn't worried at this point. I reasoned that it was most likely just another blank threat online, and that nothing would happen. After about 40 minutes of silence, sitting on the cold floor in the corner of the room, the emergency green flashing light turned off, then followed by the air conditioning slowly falling silent, and then the hallway lights switched off. The school had cut the power, but why though? At this point, me and my classmates were staring at each other. We all knew that something real was going on, as the school never cut off the power unless something serious was happening. After 10 minutes or so, we could all hear a faint banging noise from down the corridor, shortly followed by heavy and fast footsteps. Someone was running down the hallway. They started banging on the lockers and screaming. At this point, a few girls started quietly crying. Just then, the most terrifying thing ever happened. One of the men, dressed as a clown, ran up to the class door, banging and screaming. Multiple people were crying now, and one of my friends whispered to me in complete seriousness, saying we were all gonna die. I have no shame in admitting that this caused me to start crying too. I then heard the loud sound of glass shattering.
Whoa!
The man had shattered the glass part of the door, and I could see his arm reaching through to try to unlock the door from the inside. I was frozen and in complete disbelief as to what I was witnessing. But luckily, my teacher reacted quickly, grabbing a piece of shattered glass from the ground and stabbing the man's arm before he could unlock the door. He instantly grabbed his arm back, and you could hear his screams of pain. He then quickly stepped away from the door, and his screams slowly faded down the corridor. After another 2 hours, the principal came on the loudspeaker, explaining everything. He said that just after 11, two men walked into the school, one holding a kitchen knife. They ran around the school, threatening to kill students and trying to break into classrooms. But once the police raided the school, only one of them was caught, and it wasn't the one who tried to break into our classroom. After the whole event, the school got over 20 buses to take the younger kids home, and the kids 9th grade and over, like me, were told to walk home in groups and call the cops if we saw anything suspicious. I had a hard week at school after that experience. I was always thinking that the men would return, this time with a gun or something, but nothing happened. This, nonetheless, will be scarred into my mind forever. Ever since the lockdown, the school has hired a few more on-campus police officers, and they've installed some auto-locking features on doors and windows. This has made me feel a little bit better in school, but this isn't just an experience you can simply forget about. I live in the middle of nowhere. The school I go to has maybe 500 students in total. It's enough for everyone to know everyone's name.
500 students in
Regardless,
total?
this day our school went on lockdown. That familiar, yet eerie chime of our principal's voice saying to remain in our classes until further notice rang through the building over the intercoms. His voice was surprisingly calm, especially considering the fact that he didn't even say it was a drill. Despite our little town, crime isn't completely unheard of. We've had our fair share of reported break-ins, robberies, and even some gang activity.
I bet it's a robber down at Chase Bank,
my friend Kyle joked. I laughed, and we started talking about what we actually thought the whole lockdown was for. Kyle's voice was beginning to get louder, only interrupted by our teacher, Miss Sander herself, shushing him. It had now been about 10 minutes of complete silence. But like most high schoolers tend to, we all lost our patience. Everyone was now talking softly to whoever they were sitting next to at this point. Just then, we all heard it. Footsteps. Not just one pair, but a few walking down the hall. We all went quiet, knowing that something was wrong, and if this was a drill, it would have been just one pair of footsteps, that being the teacher checking on the classrooms. Even Kyle, who had previously been talking, grew silent. Miss Sander moved slowly to the doorway, peering out from behind a corner. The heaviness in the air was suffocating. Just then, we heard footsteps again, seemingly doing another lap around the school. A girl across the room let out a muffled sob of fear. I focused my attention on the door. I was leaning out from behind a table to peer through the window to see if I could see anything. I'm not sure what I expected to see, but whatever I was expecting, a whole lot of nothing was not it. The hallway was empty and completely dark, as it tends to be when no one was in it. The lights were all automated in my school, but just then, I noticed some of them turn on. A wave of yellow light instantly filled the room as we huddled in, casting shadows against the rows of desks. Someone somewhere tried to calm the crying girl, but I could hear their own murmured voice waver. I was still looking through the door's window from a distance at this point. But of course, as I was doing this, I saw someone walk up to the window and start looking through into the room. I instantly ducked back down behind the table the whole class was hiding behind. I felt my heart beat wildly as I heard the sound of the doorknob start to shift. My vision grew static as I pulled my knees to my chest, curling up tightly in the corner of the room. The door shook as the guy banged on it repeatedly. As he was doing this, my biggest fear came true. The door hinges gave out, and this guy proceeded to walk into the classroom. All of us went silent, praying this man wouldn't walk over to the corner of the room and see all of us hiding behind this table. About a minute passed of just this guy standing there, and we could hear someone else sprinting to the door, followed by the words,
"Dude, we gotta go. The cops are already here."
That's when I heard the guy start running out of the room and down the hall. The cops came, and a little later that was it. The guys who entered the school were never caught, and apparently they were armed with guns. The story goes that one of the kids at my school tweeted at a gang, essentially making fun of them the night before that school day. And of course, the gang took it very seriously and planned on raiding the school and killing the kid responsible. Luckily, they weren't successful, but this experience still terrifies me nonetheless.
Yeah, oh yeah, tweeting at games is ridiculous. Bro, y'all know who I ain't seen in a little minute? Wait, man, I don't. Why? Yo, hold on. Bro, y'all, Llama Arts. My only thing, I remember Llama Arts, bro. I remember Llama Arts, bro. I remember Llama Arts, y'all. You love eating llamas? These videos kind of short though. Hey, I never hit sight, bro. I don't want to watch that. Hey, do y'all? So listen, y'all. Do y'all want to watch Creepy Deep Well, or y'all want to watch Sleepover Stories? These two kind of got me interested. So Sleepover or Dark Well. We ain't gonna watch them old. We ain't gonna watch them old school lot. We can watch three of those. Either or. Don't matter. But we just gonna buy the both of them, man. We'll watch the Dark Well first.
I'm a first.
I was 26 years old, and I was unemployed. Feeling unfulfilled by the monotony of a job life, I decided I would try my hand at working from home. So my days and nights comprised me of surfing the internet for any jobs I could get. I was a big procrastinator, so more often than not I'd stray away and waste time doing other things. One day, I came across talk about the deep web while on Reddit. I felt amused by the people talking about it as if it was something so scary, and decided I'd look into it. It was stupid of me to go on it in the first place, but I made it even sillier by deciding to check it out late at night. It was about 2 a.m. and I came across a website where you could chat with someone anonymously. The person I got was a woman. She was in her early 20s and very pretty. She sat with her head in her hands, looking playful into the webcam while batting her eyes. I had no desire to turn my camera on and started our chat, thinking that while I didn't come across anything scary, I could befriend this pretty girl. It sounded like a better deal anyway. She told me to turn the camera on, but I ignored that request and tried to get her to talk. She finally did after some prodding, but I noticed how guarded she was. I also noticed how after every message I sent, her eyes would look off camera, either to her side or somewhere behind her computer. After a while, it started getting annoying, so I asked her if someone else was there with her.
I want to see you first,
she said. Up until now, I'd been chatting while she'd answered my questions verbally. I'm not that curious.
Don't be scared,
she said, laughing, this time looking behind the laptop again and making a face that seemed to indicate she was laughing at my expense, with someone else. This is getting boring. It feels like I'm not just talking to you.
That's because you're not. You're talking to all of us.
All of us?
Who else is there?
Turn your camera on.
Is this a joke?
Turn it on.
Okay, I'll be leaving now.
Turn on the camera.
Her laughter was almost piercing by now. There was nothing humorous about the situation, yet she threw her head back with riotous laughter.
Oh!
I'd had enough and moved the cursor over to turn the chat box off when I saw the cursor had jammed. The only thing that was working was the chat box, and I still had access to the keyboard.
Turn the camera on, sweetie.
Her gumdrop-filled voice was louder than before when I moved my gaze up to see her smiling toothfully at the camera. Her face still beautiful, but the smile completely fake. My computer's crashed. I can't see the screen. Sorry. I lied. I didn't want her to know I had no option but to chat. Her screen flashed before going blank. There was nothing there but a black screen. I felt relieved, thinking that at least I didn't need to talk to her while I tried to figure out what happened to the screen. Just then, a chat message popped up.
Open the damn camera, you...
The aggressiveness in the message frightened me. Now, the fact that I couldn't see her face while she typed this made me feel nervous. I didn't dare reply back, but then the cursor moved. I watched shell-shocked as the cursor twirled around the screen.
Boy.
Open the camera now.
Yeah, alright. All you got to do is just... Pew. That's all you got to do. Now, I ain't going to do that because it's going to end my live, though. But all you got to do.
I still didn't make a move. There was no way anything good would be waiting for me if I did what she asked. The screen began flickering, as if a virus was causing the computer to writhe in agony.
Do you want me to find you?
My heart raced. Could it be possible she knew where I was? I started typing. Please stop bothering me.
Then turn on the fucking camera.
By this point, I thought she was some kind of sadist and got her kicks by scaring unassuming people in chat rooms. So I obliged and turned the webcam on. I saw my frightened face staring into the screen. Judging by my face, my attempts at looking tough were painfully unsuccessful. I asked around for the girl looking straight into the camera, telling her I did what she wanted and to stop hacking into my computer. There were several seconds of silence. I kept my stare directed to the little box that showed her camera feed, but it was pitch black. I motioned into the camera in confusion, feeling as if she was messing with me now. Then I saw another message.
You got a clogged drain?
Go down again, Bior. Yes, let us see down there. Bior, can we see your stick? Yo, what is y'all talking about? Y'all trying to get me kicked off of YouTube?
Look here.
After a few seconds of staring at those words, I looked back at her camera, but my computer instantly malfunctioned, and I received another message.
Look here. Don't look up.
The chat was filled with nonsensical gibberish. She typed with such ferocious speed, my screen whirled away with her constant messages. I couldn't understand what was going on, but I didn't look up. My patience ran thin, and I wrote back, "What is this supposed to mean?" Her response came. I read only the letters in bold and shuddered. I looked back into her webcam and I fell back into my chair, my eyes widening. She was back there, only her face looked completely demented. She had a savage expression, devoid of emotion, but her eyes were almost popping out of their sockets, and she was huffing as if she had extreme amounts of pent-up rage. The way she looked directly into the camera made me feel she despised me with all of her being.
It's crazy, man.
There was no amusement there anymore.
Man. That's crazy.
Her camera went blank again. Then the chat popped up. My heart stopped again. For a split second, there had been the same blackness,
I got you.
only for the
I'm
lights to come back on. She wasn't alone anymore. There was a man next to her with a black mask on. He made no movements other than look into the camera like the girl. The girl's neck creaked to her side.
Dang!
It looked like it was causing her pain, and then the lights went out again. The chat resumed. This time, I screamed in fright and fell off my chair. There was another man with them now. He was standing next to the girl with the original one on the other side. This man had the same mask on, but his hands were grasping the girl's shoulders. Even with the subpar quality of the webcam, I could see the force with which the man dug his hands into the girl. It looked like he could rip her in two. The girl, however, had a huge grin on her face. Her eyes were mad with glee, or so it looked. Her teeth were perfectly lined up as her mouth spread into that toothy grin, but I could see she was in pain. Even with the smallest sign of her smile fading, the man clenched his hands even tighter than before, which made her smile even wider. All three of them were shaking, as if it was extremely cold where they were. After a couple seconds, I realized they were shuddering, like trying to hold back laughter.
What are you laughing at?
I yelled into the screen. They didn't answer, and continued to tremor with concealed hilarity.
What is so damn funny?
I bellowed. They stopped shaking. Within a couple seconds, the screen went black again. When it turned back on,
whoa!
My hand no longer grasped the girl's shoulder. Neither was she smiling.
So look, how would y'all feel? Well, I know y'all never be in this predicament, but how would y'all feel if y'all chatting with somebody and all you see is them doing this? That's all they doing. Like, what would y'all do? Like, all you see is this, but they hitting that same zone. Your soul is mine. They hitting that. What would you do? Throw your computer away, leave? That's the only thing you can do.
All three pointed into the camera. Upon a closer look, I understood that they weren't pointing at me. They were pointing behind me. I didn't need to look back. I could see myself in the webcam. There was someone peeking from behind me. It was another man in a mask, and according to what I saw on my webcam, he was with me in my room, right behind me. I turned around quickly, but saw nothing where I had seen him in the webcam. I turned back towards the screen and, to my bewilderment, saw a third man in the girl's chat box. It was the same man I had just seen standing in my room. Now, all three had their hands on the girl and were gripping tight. The girl wasn't laughing anymore. She had a look of utter devastation. A tear was dropping from her eye, but it wasn't just a tear. It was blood trickling down her eye socket. She then mouthed the words, "Help me," and the next second she screamed as if her lungs were being ripped off as the screen went black. I immediately got up and pulled the plug out of my computer and backed out.
You telling me you just not doing it? You telling me you ain't been do this? Man, you ain't, bro. You could have been do this, bro. Oh my god, bro.
The room. For a couple seconds, I swear I heard her screams, even though the computer was unplugged. The room went quiet, but I was too devastated to stay there and ran out of my house despite it being 3 a.m. I caught a cab and went over to my friends, who had to talk me down for an hour before I could be calmed. I returned back to my house with my friend a day later. Everything was the same, and after thoroughly checking around the house, we concluded that there was no one there, nor was there a sign of anyone ever having broken in. I've never gone back to the deep web. My friend suggested it might have been some prank by computer hackers, but the way that girl shrieked, the terror she had on her face, it convinced me she had been a victim herself. I had wondered if I had stayed on for longer, if I would have become a victim too. Could those men have found me? Was there really someone in the room with me? There was nothing I could do, because there was nothing concrete to report to the police. What I did do was throw the computer out and buy a new one. There was no way I could even open it back up after what happened.
Now you want to throw the computer away. Now you want to throw the computer away. That's hilarious. So the other one was that sleeper. I might gotta click the bad button. See if I can find. Okay, yeah, so.
This.
But why is it so loud in my ear, man? Y'all, look. Why is that so loud in my ear, bro?
This happened when I was 15 years old. My best friend Anthony wanted me to come over for the night, since his parents would be gone all weekend. I rode my bike over and put it in his backyard before letting myself in through his back door. We played basically every video game he had, from FIFA all the way to Call of Duty, with popcorn and other junk food spilled out.
Hey, do y'all like FIFA? I ain't gonna lie, I never I gotta get this controller. But yeah, do y'all like FIFA though? Never played it. Yes.
But all over the floor. As the night progressed, we moved from video games to watching half a movie and getting bored to doing prank calls at close to 10 o'clock.
Would y'all do a prank call? Me personally, y'all, I never did no prank call a day in my life. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, bro. Like I never did no prank call, bro. Yo, did y'all ever do the prank call before? Probably not. I see. God would make an example out of me, so no. See, I never prank call nobody. I don't even play like that. I don't even like talking to people like that on the phone for real.
But he said he wasn't supposed to have anybody over for the weekend, so he didn't want to call. We planned on sleeping in the living room, so we just resumed watching the movie that we hadn't finished from earlier. Right after the phone call had left my mind, me and Anthony looked at each other when we heard his front storm door opening, and then the doorknob to the front door began to turn.
What?
It only was able to turn about halfway before the lock restricted it. Anthony turned off the TV, and I went over to the window to see who it was. I spread the blinds open. There was a tall guy standing outside. He noticed the blinds moving and turned to look at me. I practically threw the blinds back into place.
He did this.
Me and Anthony hid in the kitchen, listening for any more noises. We heard the sound of the gate to the backyard opening, as it was right outside the kitchen window. "God damn it," I said. "I forgot to shut the back door." Anthony urged me to run and shut it. I made it to the hallway leading to his back door, and froze. There was a silhouette standing out.
What do you mean? Ah! Yo, how do you just forget? How do you just forget? I got to lift the glasses up. How do you just forget to lock and close the back door?
Outside the back door. I don't think he noticed me, but he was surely looking into the house. He opened the door and stepped inside. I tiptoed to the kitchen and motioned for Anthony to follow me upstairs. We made it to his room as quietly as possible, pulling the door shut to avoid making any noise. We crawled under his bed. He had cloth covering the bottom of his bed, so you couldn't see anything under it unless you actually moved the cloth.
I just connected cloth.
That's crazy, bro. That's insane. I'm not gonna lie to y'all.
The doors downstairs all opened, each one getting closer to the stairs. Thumps finally began up the stairs, and he was right outside the door now. The door to the room opened.
Yo, Pierre, you wanna come out here? Hold on, y'all. Look, y'all. Hold on.
The door to the room opened.
Yo, Pierre, you wanna come out here? My bad. I had a light in the mood, y'all. I had a light in the mood, bro. I had a light in the mood. I'm sorry. I had to. I had a light in the mood.
I could hear Anthony's breathing. It was too loud. Footsteps moved over to the closet, and then the closet opened. I could hear the coat hangers being slid around as the fabric of the jackets and coats rubbed against each other. Footsteps moved over to the bed and stopped. I felt like my heart was about to explode out of my chest. Anthony's breathing was too loud.
Anthony, come on,
I had
man.
to cover his mouth with my
Bro,
hand.
you're so heavy, bro.
Nothing but silence in the room now. We laid still for so long, I almost thought he wasn't even in the room anymore. I moved my hand away from Anthony's mouth and whispered in his ear, "You think we can make a run for it?" He was about to answer when the most disturbing memory-haunting scream I'd ever heard filled my ears as Anthony was seemingly dragged out from under the bed. I crawled out and saw him struggling with the man. I desperately looked around for anything to use as a weapon. I settled with the screwdriver sitting on his nightstand. I hurried over to the man and drove the screwdriver into his back. He let go of Anthony as he let out a scream of agony, giving us time to get the hell out of the house. Running onto the road would give away our position too easily. It would take too long to make it to his neighbor's house. We dove for the tree line in the woods and took cover behind a bush, watching the house. The back door opened as the man stepped outside, looking around the backyard. He then looked out to the woods. I felt his eyes pass me as he scanned through the tree line. It seemed that it was too dark for him to see us. Then, he turned his head back in our direction. I ducked behind the bush. "Joe, he's coming." "What?" "Dude, get up, we gotta run." He was right. The man was approaching us fast. How could he have seen us? We ran through the woods with the leaves crunching under us, giving away our position. When Anthony tripped over something, I crouched down with him, hoping we had run.
Bro, Anthony trip over something to get Anthony, come on, bro. You selling, bro. This is not a good debut stat line for you, bro. You trip. Why you out here tripping, bro?
Far enough. Not even 20 seconds later, oncoming footsteps from the direction we were running from came fast. They slowed down only 2 trees away from us as we lay face down in the leaves. Moments later, the footsteps take off in another direction. We waited until we could no longer hear them and took off back in the direction of the house. While running, over the sound of leaves crushing and my heavy breathing, I could swear I heard leaves crushing from behind us. We made it back to his backyard, into his house, and this time remembering to shut the back door. We were now able to call the police. Anthony stayed on the line with them, while I patrolled the back windows, making sure nobody was out there. It was so dark though, I couldn't see anything. So I did something that seems stupid today. I turned on his backyard lights, and immediately in the distance, over by the woods, I saw him, standing in front of a big tree. He turned off back into the woods and disappeared out of sight. That was the last time me or Anthony ever saw him. I would be lying if I told you we heard the occasional knocks at our windows or something cliche. No, that was it. 5 years have passed and nothing has happened. Do I wonder if it was somehow linked to the prank call? Maybe. Does it make sense? Not really. But yeah, this was the story of how me and my still best friend Anthony almost died during a break-in.
Well, y'all boys don't be thinking.
Well, I can't.
Y'all boys don't be thinking, bro. Y'all tripping. Y'all like Uber Eats? Or y'all like DoorDash? Police surprise abusive mom after school secretly called 911. It's crazy, really. I don't want to see that. Nope, I don't want to see that. Probably DoorDash. Alright, y'all. So, do y'all want to see hide and seek, disturbing true Snapchat stories, or yeah, hide and seek, or Snapchat? Which one, y'all? Which one y'all want to see? Hide and seek, Snapchat. Snap. Alright, we're gonna watch Snap.
This happened a week ago. Up until a few days ago, I went to a small, local gym in my now previous New Jersey town called Black Bear Fitness. One day, I had the misfortune of running into some skinny, awkward, yet creepy-looking kid, probably 18 years old. He didn't look like he belonged in a gym at all. I had headphones in and I was doing my set when I heard him saying something to me, but it was muffled by the music. I was already annoyed with this kid, given that he was breaking an unwritten rule of the gym. Don't try to talk to somebody when they're doing their sets. I took my time finishing my set, and then took my headphones out to ask if he needed something. Then he started acting like I looked familiar, but right away I knew this kid was just trying some pathetic attempt at making friends. I assured him I didn't, but the kid wouldn't stop talking to me. I'll skip most of the conversation, but eventually he actually asked me for my Instagram and Snapchat, weirdly enough, and for whatever reason I gave them to him. Instead of just saying something like, "Buddy, I'm trying to work out," or "I don't have social media." After I gave him my Snapchat and Instagram, however, I did kind of urge him to let me resume my workout. He finally seemed to get the message and walked away. Not without saying bye like 3 times though. That night, I got a snap on my phone saying "from Sean." I immediately sighed and said, "Oh no," just wondering why the hell the kid would snap me. I opened the snap, and the kid was in a
Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Y'all see this, man? Bro, y'all don't see this, bro. Can't make this up, man.
Creepy, weird pose, face way too close to the camera, with his head resting in his hand and a half smile on his face. The text over the picture was "Hey" with 2 Y's. I muttered the words, "What the fuck?" For the record, I'm a guy, which made this even more weird. My thought process was, I've had enough of this loser already. I'm gonna remove him and make it clear I don't want to talk if I see him at the gym again. And so I did. I removed him minutes after he sent that snap.
What is he watching, man?
I'm sure not even a minute later, again a message popped up on my phone saying "Snapchat from Sean." I waited a few minutes before opening it. This one was even creepier. Now the kid was sitting up on his bed, no smile, more of a surprised, angry expression. The text over the image said, "Why did you remove me?" Now I went as far as to block him, meaning he couldn't snap me anymore. And that was that. I threw my phone on the desk and sighed out of relief. Half an hour later, my phone goes off, saying "Sean added you as a friend," and then Snapchat from Sean.
He added you as a friend and
He
you blocked
actually
him?
made a new account.
For the
I
plot
opened the
is
snap
insane.
and felt my heart drop. It was a picture of my front lawn. The text over it, "Answer me, bitch."
That's
the first
crazy.
thing I could think of was, how did he find my address? Then I realized, Snapchat made that new map feature that lets you see where your friends are. Somehow I had the balls to open the window to see outside. It was clear out there. I shut the window and the blinds and started considering calling 911.
Whoa, a window
It was
tap?
the sound of taps on the window.
No.
I took a deep breath, and with one swift motion, I pulled up the blind and the window at the same time and pulled the kid into my room by his neck.
Ooh!
I punched him in the face a few times before he was out cold. Now I called 911. By the time they arrived, he was awake, cursing me out, promising he'd be back and kill me.
I
The
like
cops
that.
heard it all. I didn't even have to make a
that.
case. The kid was an idiot. Luckily, the timing of this worked out well, because I just moved a couple days ago out of state. Only thing that worries me, I don't want to have to make a new Snapchat account, but anytime somebody new adds me on the app, I'll never know if it's secretly that Sean kid again.
Alright, y'all. So, do y'all want to watch? Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. That actually was good. I can't lie. Alright, do y'all want to watch the Roommate animated, Hitchhiking, or Night Shift? Roommate, Hitchhiking, or Night Shift? What y'all want to watch? Look at these guys. Hey, Fives, I don't care if you tired, Fives. You stand up tonight. You stand up. You stand up. We ain't done. You stand up, Fives. You stand up.
We have got to the...
You stand up, Fives. You be alright.
Looking for a new roommate is always a daunting task. Even though you interview and take the time to get to know that person, you don't truly find out who they are until you start living with them. I had begun searching for a roommate after I decided to leave my current residency. I was contacted a couple of hours after placing an ad on the Facebook Marketplace. The message read,
Hey Chris, I'll be moving out of my current apartment this August and I'm looking to room with someone new, as my roommates are moving to California this year. I'm 27 and I'm currently going to school.
No, you
When
know
I'm
I'm not
at school,
letting you
I
out,
enjoy hiking and
No.
watching movies. I also apprentice at
No,
a taxidermy
you stuck
shop
with
on
me.
the days I don't have
You stuck in class.
Hope that's not weird. It's always been a fun hobby of mine. Anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing back from you.
No.
Have a great day, Lunaire.
My first and most obvious reaction after reading the message was to check her profile. She was of medium height, had long, messy blonde hair and green eyes. In her profile picture, I saw her standing with a man and a woman shoulder to shoulder. They each adorned goofy grins and held up peace signs. Under the photo, the caption read, "Love my roommates." I smiled to myself and decided to send her a message back. The sun beat down on us as we hoisted various objects to the second floor of our new apartment. It took us a couple days to get everything out of the moving trucks and into our new place, but as soon as we did, a wave of relief washed over our sweat-drenched and sore bodies. After a couple more hours of rearranging, we each grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the porch. We reminisced about old 90s cartoons and what video games we obsessed over as kids, and as the sun started to set, I truly felt relaxed and confident that things were going to work out. A week later, I started a new job for a construction company that was owned by a good friend of mine. As I was getting ready, I heard the front door swing open. I walked into the living room to see Lunaire and her friend David sliding in a large box. "What you got there?" I asked. Through a strained grunt, she replied,
I bought a freezer to store some of the animals I'm planning on using in my taxidermy work. I hope that's alright.
A freezer?
I was obviously hesitant at first, as there was no mention of this happening in the first place, but I eventually accepted and returned to my room to continue getting ready for work. I came home at around 9 p.m. after having a couple of beers with friends and noticed that the freezer was nestled snugly in the lower part of the pantry. A low hum could be heard reverberating off of the inner walls. I was curious to see what was inside, but didn't want to intrude on Lunaire's business, so I went into my room and changed into more comfortable clothing. After changing, I came back out into the kitchen and started making a sandwich. I opened the fridge and grabbed what I needed. As I turned around, I stubbed my toe on the edge of the island countertop.
Oh, I know that
and let
hurt.
out a long, exasperated grunt. Through my frustration, I slammed the fridge door shut and checked my toe to see if there was any bleeding. As I raised my head back up, I was greeted by a shadowy figure. Lunaire was standing in the doorway leading to her room. The darkness behind her almost
I know
seemed
that
to
hurt.
envelop her.
Is everything okay?
She said in a deadpan
I know
tone.
that hurt.
"Shit, yeah, I'm sorry. I just slammed my toe into the corner of the countertop as I was making a sandwich. I hope I didn't wake you,"
It's fine.
she said, in the same deflated tone as before. She then turned around and walked back into the darkness of her room. I could tell that she was pissed, so I quietly made my sandwich and retreated back to my room as well. only hearing the low hum from the freezer as I closed my door. I had the next day off, so I was able to sleep in a little longer than usual. When I finally emerged from my room, I walked into the kitchen to make breakfast. As I opened the refrigerator, I noticed that the light wasn't turning on and there was a lack of cold air escaping from inside. I turned around and flipped the light switch to confirm my suspicion. Sure enough, the power was out. Damn it, I muttered under my breath. I walked over to Lunaire's room and knocked on her door to tell her about the power outage if she didn't already know, but there was no answer. I then remembered that she had classes that day and probably wasn't home. I walked back to the kitchen and past the pantry. As I did, I slipped on the floor but was able to catch myself on the countertop. "What the?" I angrily exclaimed as I looked down at the floor trying to figure out what I had slipped on. It was blood.
Blood?
It started to leak from the corner of the freezer and pool onto the floor. I quickly tried to open the freezer to find out the cause of the viscous liquid, but then I noticed that it had a padlock attached to it. I don't remember seeing that before. I ran out to my car and grabbed my toolbox from the back seat.
College is...
Nah, that's insane, really, bro. Blood? Nah. No. Not no blood, no.
I approached the freezer and set my tools down on the nearby countertop. I then pulled out a small pair of bolt cutters and snapped through the metal of the padlock. It fell to the ground with a large thud. I creaked open the top of the freezer and was greeted with a putrid stench that permeated my nostrils. I quickly pinched my nose and walked away gagging in response. "I guess I should have realized that was gonna happen," I muttered to myself in between gags. After gaining my composure, I grabbed some gloves from under the sink and started taking inventory. I could see a couple of dead birds and plastic bags wedged into the corners of the freezer. I took each bag out and set them in the trash can nearby. That's when I noticed that the blood was coming from the corner of the larger black bag. I don't know why, but I decided to open the top of the bag and peer inside. I was greeted by large, milky white eyes.
Whoa!
A swollen black tongue surrounded by cracked and bloated lips, and the matted hair of a human head. I swiftly dropped the bag and fell backwards onto the floor. My breathing had ceased to exist, and I grabbed the trash can next to me and expelled my disgust into it. I then ran out the door, got into my car, and called the police. As I sat in the interrogation room with a blanket over my shoulders, I couldn't help but think about the face I'd seen. It looked so familiar. That's when it finally hit me. I pulled out my phone and looked at Lunaire's profile picture. It was her old roommate, the one she said was moving to California. When the detective entered the room, she started the questioning process, asking me if I started noticing any weird behavioral occurrences around the apartment. Yeah, I stubbed my toe the other day and she creepily stood in the doorway. It seemed like she was pissed, but for some reason I had a strange feeling like she was concerned about something. That's when I connected the dots. She didn't come out into the kitchen because she heard me stub my toe. She came out into the kitchen because she thought I slammed the freezer instead of the fridge. A cold sweat started to form on my forehead as my surroundings became blurred. I could hear a low whine slowly starting to cover up the words of concern from the detective. As my vision started to clear, I could see another officer enter the room and whisper something into her ear as he handed her a piece of paper. "Do you have somewhere you could stay at?" she asked. "I mean, I was planning on staying with my parents. They live about 30 minutes outside of town." "Okay," she paused. "Listen, I don't want to worry you, but we found this picture inside of your apartment." She slid the piece of paper across the table, and I immediately felt like someone kicked me in the chest. The head of Lunaire's other roommate sat on the chair.
What?
In the background, scrawled on the wall in blood, read, "Love my roommates. All of them."
Too much going on for me, bro. Yeah, too much going on for me, man. I ain't gonna lie, it's too much going on for me, bro. I might have watched one more. What we watching one more, bro? And I'm getting off, bro. Yeah, it's just too much going on for me, bro. I can't. Yeah, it's too much going on, bro. All right, y'all. Do y'all want to watch? All right, y'all. Do y'all want to watch True Tender Date, The Inhumane Entity, Pizza Delivery, or Midnight Horror? Which one y'all want to watch? Bro, that was crazy, bro. Which one, y'all? Tender Date, Midnight Horror, Pizza Delivery, or Inhumane Entity, bro. Alright, everybody said Tender Date. Cause y'all think it's lighthearted? Okay. Y'all probably right. Cause I'm with you. Ain't nobody trying to watch no Inhumane Entity, bro. Nobody trying to watch that, bro.
Thanks to Shudder for sponsoring the This happened when I was 17 years old. It's been nearly 2 years since my girlfriend broke up with me, and I was very chewed up about it on the inside.
Yeah.
I've called her several times, but it always went to voicemail. I've tried texting her on Messenger since, ironically, we were friends on Facebook, but still, not a single response. As the weeks went by, I became very devastated and was worried that I'd never find love again. My brother told me to just forget about my ex-girlfriend and that it was time for me to move on. He introduced me to this app called Tinder, which he said was great for online dating. I was very familiar with online dating, but never actually done any of it, because there was no way that I even felt like hooking up with some random person I met online. But I figured it couldn't hurt to try it out, so I decided to give it a shot. After I finished setting up my account and was done creating my profile, I just started randomly liking a few of the girls that I thought were pretty. I'm not picky, I just wanted to make sure that I found the right girl for me. A few weeks later, I've had already received my first match on Tinder. Her name was Robin. She had blue hair, freckles, and beautiful amethyst purple lips. According to her profile, she had the same interest in the stuff I was into, and was even around the same age as me. Even better, she lived in the same town as me. By the way, I live in Memphis, Tennessee. We started having a friendly group chat on Tinder, which was going well. Her message said, "You may not know me, but we went to the same high school." I replied, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yeah, I was always the quiet one at the back of class." "Anyways, I think you're really cute. We should hang out sometime." I agreed and asked her to where she wanted to hang out, where to meet her, and what time I should be there. She said we'd hang out at her place and meet her at the park tomorrow night at around 9 p.m. I accepted. I got to the park that night.
Man, so you decide to meet somebody you don't know in a park at nighttime. You don't think that's a little iffy? Somebody to meet you at nighttime? Come on, bro.
At around 9 p.m. sharp. I didn't call her because I didn't want to sound too desperate. Some time passed and I finally decided to call her to no response. I also tried texting her to no avail as well. It was around 9:30 p.m. There was still no sign of her, and I was beginning to grow impatient. I was starting to think that maybe she wasn't going to show up at all. I sighed and said, "I knew this was too good to be true. She's not even here yet. Screw it. I'm going home. I can't believe I came out here this late for nothing."
I hope you don't get set up.
Oh well, so much for online dating. I was about to start my walk home when suddenly I saw a black convertible pull up to my location. The car stopped right in front of me, and the window rolled down, revealing a creepy-looking old man who was probably in his mid-30s.
Nope.
He gazed at me with a weird smile and asked, "You going somewhere, kid?" I responded, "Yeah, I'm just headed home." He asked me why I was out there this late, and told him that I was supposed to meet someone, but it seemed like she wasn't going to show up. He said,
"Alright, Fries, be smooth, bro.
You must be waiting for my daughter."
I hope your doctor's appointment goes
The man, by the name of Jeff, introduced himself to me as Robin's father, and said that Robin has told him a lot about me. He told me that Robin couldn't meet me at the park because she remembered that was the night she had to go to a slumber party with her friends, and she forgot to cancel. He told me she wouldn't be home till 11 o'clock, and that's when I knew my night was a bust. He apologized and offered to give me a ride home. I knew it was going to take too long for me to walk, so I accepted. It was going to be a long drive, but luckily I knew all the shortcuts to my house. I told him where I lived and how to get there as I got into the car. After a few minutes, I was feeling tired from being out so late, so I closed my eyes for just a few short seconds and dozed off. Not long afterward, I awoke. Feeling a little drowsy, I rubbed my eyes and realized that I was still in the car. I asked the man where we were, as this wasn't the usual route to my house. He said, "Relax, kid, this is a shortcut. We're almost there." I asked where we were going, and then he looked at me with some sinister grin on his face and just chuckled. I felt my heart almost explode out of my chest as he did that. I looked down and saw a handgun sticking out of his jacket pocket. I put two and two together and realized what was happening. I told him, "Let me out now!" He responded,
It's crazy, bro. Yo, that boy done got lined up.
"No." Then, he put his foot on the accelerator, speeding up the car.
Oh!
I tried to get out, but he had already put the child lock on. It seemed hopeless.
A child lock on the front door? I didn't know you can do that.
I was trapped. There was no way out. To make matters worse, we were driving through a forest area with no cell service. I couldn't even call for help. But I just had to get out. As soon as the car started to slow down, I stabbed him in his shoulder with a pocket knife that I found on the floor. He screamed in pain as I was able to turn off the child lock, unlock the door, and run as fast as I could into the woods. While I was running, I could hear multiple gunshots being fired at me,
he's shooting at him.
but luckily, not a single one hit me. I never looked back because I had the fear of the man chasing me at the back of my mind. I dove behind a tree and hid under a bush. I heard the man yelling,
"You can't hide from me! I will find you!"
I covered my mouth with my hands and held my breath, trying not to make a sound. Everything was silent for a while, until I saw the man was looking for me with a flashlight. He flashed it past me multiple times. When I heard his footsteps going deeper into the woods, that's when I knew the coast was clear. I ran, using the flashlight on my phone to help navigate me through the dark and scary woods. In hindsight, I knew that was a stupid move considering the situation. I could hear the leaves crunching and the twigs snapping as I ran, which would also easily give away my position. When the crunching and snapping got louder, I looked behind me and my heart dropped when I saw that the man was chasing me. I ran as fast as I could with the man hot on my tail, firing every single last live round he had in his gun, but thankfully the shots missed again.
"There's nowhere for you to hide,"
he said. I thought I was going to die, until I heard the man trip over something, and I was able to get away unharmed.
Boy, you better run, boy.
I kept running until I was out of the woods and back onto the road. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be seen, which means I lost him. I sighed in relief, and then I saw a red car driving down the road. I was able to wave it down and told the driver that I was kidnapped and almost killed by some crazy man in the woods. It took a lot of begging, But the driver finally gave me a ride to the police station, and I told the cops everything. Unfortunately, I didn't get the man's tag number, but I gave the police a clear description. After the police had run a search, they told me that he didn't even have a daughter, and that they've been trying to catch this guy for months.
Trying to catch him?
As it turns out, he's wanted in several countries for the kidnappings of multiple teenagers and young men. How I managed to escape him is a miracle. The officers kindly gave me a ride home, and I didn't tell anyone what happened except my brother. The man was never found, nor was he ever caught, and they say he's still out there, even to this day, which scares me the most. What's even worse is that I stupidly gave him my address, so who knows if he might try to kidnap me again. Needless to say, my days of using Tinder weren't over after that. The whole incident just made me a lot more cautious from there on out.
No, that's crazy, bro. That's crazy. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's insane, bro. That's insane. But yeah, like I said, I'm not about a lot of y'all, but I'm for sure about to go to sleep. I ain't gonna lie, for sure about to go to sleep. I just want to say, I appreciate y'all for watching me. Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, I'm definitely about to go to sleep though, man. Like I said, I love y'all. You know, I love y'all a lot, bro. And I ain't gonna lie, bro, I'm out, bro. Yeah, I love y'all, bro. I love you too, brother. I love y'all so much, bro.